And it's not one SDA choir.
Uh-uh.
They
Across the
all
board.
sing
Like that.
beautifully.
Very, very well. Welcome to the show, everybody. Today is World Press Freedom Day. And on this day, we'll be looking at seeking the truth and what it means to seek the truth. We'll have a conversation with the Media Council of Kenya Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Omoyo. This is one man with a name so good, they named him twice. He's David Omoyo, right?
Uh-huh.
The theme for this year's celebration is all about
Freedom.
Information
as a public good. Okay? And that's the theme. And so we'll be having a conversation with him on what that means. And then the CS for the National Treasury is preparing already for this year is done. As far as the Treasury people are concerned, they're already looking forward into the next financial year that begins on July 1st. And they have their figures ready. Ducks in a row, so to speak. The budget next year is going to be 3.6 trillion shillings.
Telling you, not a small number.
The government is expecting to raise 1.8 trillion shillings through direct taxes and levies and other revenues. And then the rest will be very creative. Now, the CS for the National Treasury says we're going to look at how we shall use the legal framework that's available, amend some of things here and there so that we can raise money. Let's just say next year is going to be an interesting year in terms of how much the government is seeking in revenue. We'll have a conversation with the CEO of the Executive Director of IPF Kenya to talk about that and to understand, is it really realistic to have a 3.6 trillion shilling budget? That's a high number. At the same time, we're still celebrating because Uhuru alifungua.
You know what? It was on Saturday.
Yes.
And I had gone to pick up something around Nairobi West. And the broadcast was going on at that time. I'm not kidding. Immediately, Uhuru finished speaking. All the bars in Nairobi West opened.
And people were seated.
People were, within an hour, they were teeming like this, and people were seated. It's as though they were waiting. They were just waiting with their stock, waiting. And people was like they're waiting in their vehicles or waiting in their homes or wherever they were coming from. Immediately, the broadcast ended. I couldn't believe it. I was standing and I was like, what is going on here? It was phenomenal to watch. Doors were just opening all over the place. People.
So you get the impression that there had been a hint.
Either that,
there was expectation.
They were just on your marks. On your marks, get set. There was expectation.
Or there was activity behind closed doors.
Or they were already there. Yeah, they were already there because the speed and alacrity with which the places filled, unbelievable. Restaurants, bars, Nairobi West, it was like a ghost town before that. People were just kind of hanging around like this finished.
But you know what it also tells you? It's the after effects of not just being cooped up, but feeling restricted, feeling restrained.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Human beings are social creatures.
Yeah.
Now, you remove that element. You see, the problem here isn't in even the physical movement, but how the mind has understood and has treated the idea of the lockdown. Now, what you're describing can give you a very, 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 should we say, keen perspective on what it is people were going through. Because for people to suddenly sort of like, it's like...
burst out of...
Yeah, exactly.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Exactly. But this isn't new. Do you remember after the long lockdown in the UK, when it suddenly opened up, do you remember the images?
Same thing happened, yeah.
I mean, people collapsing, not because they had consumed more than they ought to have consumed.
They were just, drunk on freedom.
Oh, yes.
My friend.
It
was immediate. And I also spoke to somebody who was on Thika Road on that day. And within an hour, cops had already moved out of the roadblock.
They're
that
gone.
roadblock at Blue Post, gone. It's open, free flowing.
Let's go.
People coming to Nairobi, people leaving Nairobi. It was right. One of those things. Anyway, we still have COVID-19. It does not mean that the lifting of those measures was on economic grounds.
Yes.
Not necessarily completely on medical grounds, because we still have numbers.
That's true. Okay, so before we look at these terrifying numbers in India, let's quickly look at what's happening in the world. 154 1,481,613 cases of COVID-19 around the world. Let's look at Kenya really quickly. 160,422 is the last count, and as of yesterday, 369 new cases and 19 deaths reported. The day before was 753 new cases and 20 new deaths. So yes, this was an economic reason behind the lifting of this lockdown and extension, or rather reduction of curfew hours. It was purely for economic reasons. Let people get back to work and try and, make a kind of sustainable livelihood for themselves. But in terms of the numbers, they're still, COVID-19 is still in the country, and people are still being asked to be careful, wear your mask, continue to sanitize. The hope is that vaccinations can happen for a majority of the population, and in good time, because, with everything that everybody has said, that at least is kind of like one of the more surer ways of protecting citizenry, in as much as wearing masks and sanitation and hygiene is also important. Vaccine gives you that kind of buffer that nothing else can. All right. So, yes, it's still there. Let's look at the craziness that is happening in India right now. You thought it was crazy last week? Let's look at some of these numbers. We saw those images over the weekend. India now is at 19,919,715. On Friday, they were at 17 million. India had an increase of 2 million cases over the last 3 days. And if we look at the numbers that were reported just yesterday, 370,059 new cases, 3,422 deaths. The day before that, 392,562. The day before that, the highest number of one country in the world ever on a single day, 402,110 new cases with 3,522 deaths. People are still crying. People are still hoping that they can get out of this mess that is right now.
Wow.
We are looking at other states now suffering a lot more than what we had seen before. The state of Uttar Pradesh, which is the one that was hardest hit a couple of weeks ago, now is not the only one. Now you have states like Delhi really suffering. Patients are dying because there is no oxygen. The little oxygen that is available goes to a few, and then they're done, and they're waiting. They're also facing a severe shortage of vaccines. They cannot produce. They cannot test as quickly as they normally would. More and more people presenting themselves to hospital before they can even be tested, they're dead. This is what we are seeing. It's not it's not a suspicion or maybe. This is the actual case, that before people can even be tested for what they may be suffering from, they present themselves to hospital where there is space, and they're dead. And
Just
now,
because they're not able to get into oxygen or
they're not able to get
into immediate
space.
immediate care,
Yes.
emergency care.
They can't. A lot of people are presenting and they're dead on arrival, unfortunately. And the thing is, we can say that there are 400,000 cases having been reported around the country in one day. Of these 400,000, the statistics that we're looking at is that about 60% are presenting with severe symptoms. That's a big number. It's over 200,000 people who are at risk of death in a day.
It's very high, very
very,
high.
very
That
high number.
strain is basically
Remember their neighbor Pakistan? Pakistan at some point was asking, are we going to be able to get help from India in terms of vaccinations? Now Pakistan is at threat of huge COVID infections just because of that proximity to India. And the already speculation is Pakistan is not going to be able to handle it. if things get even to a quarter of how they are in India?
This Indian issue, man, is a lesson in so many things. Because one of the things that the Indian government and then the people seem to have done is let down their guard. At some point, they had it under control. It was clear.
Nicely.
But then it looks like instead of continuing the rigorous tightening of things or the rigorous preventative measures, let me call it that way, people felt, well, we overcome this thing. And the subtle and then the not so subtle message that seemed to have gone throughout India was, we've beaten this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're even providing vaccines.
We're okay. Let's help the world.
Yeah.
Yes. And then came the festival. And with that festival, the chaos that we now see. Now, the Indian Supreme Court has waded into this matter. And they have given the Indian government this, not today, they gave it for today, to ensure that they've taken the measures to guarantee that there'll be oxygen for all those who need it and whatever care that is necessary. Now, by the time something reaches the Supreme Court and the courts have to intervene, it tells you that these aren't simple matters. Yes. And then remember, India has also something going on. It's called an election. So, my friend, and in some of the provinces, there's some form of election already going on.
Going on already.
Now,
yeah.
It isn't one thing, it is several. But why I mentioned this, we talk about unintended consequences. But I would like to call it the role of chance here in India. BJP party, popular. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, popular.
Modi, popular, yeah.
Now, what is going on in India, to me, these are the building blocks of how popularity begins to wane. The sort of deaths that are occurring in India, those aren't good for any leader's popularity.
Yeah.
Because everyone will be touched by this one.
They'll really hit hard home. Take a break now. 18 minutes after 6. Kenya's biggest conversation is live streaming on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Say hello to us. We'll be saying hello to you shortly after we take a look at the weather forecast for the day. Good morning.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Hello.
Halo, umesikia?
Nimesikia nini?
Hujasikia habari? Hebu acha nikuambie. Kile kimetokea.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Don't wait for hearsay. Dial star 550 star 1 hash to read the standard e-paper from the convenience of your mobile phone for only 20 shillings from your telecom line, and stay up to date for a reliable source with over 100 years of experience with no additional data charges.
As the Kenyans are roared into the home straight here, 4 Kenyan queens have lit up this balmy Bahamian night.
It's where the rivalry is unmatched, where the soul meets the track, where the great are distinguished from the good. An arena where the records are broken.
A new world record. It's not just been beaten, it's been obliterated.
A stage where the legends are born. For Team Kenya, the Olympics is more than just a sport. It is our tradition. It's an event that has put Kenya on the roadmap. The Standard Group lets you watch every minute and every action live in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, because we live for Team Kenya. We live for the game. At Standard Group, sports lives here.
The weather with Spice
All right,
FM.
we're looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this Monday morning. Highs of 23 and lows of 17. A high chance of rain this early morning. Cloudy conditions in Nyeri at 15, highs of 23. And we're looking at highs of 25 in Nakuru. It's 15 degrees and clear. 14 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions in Eldoret. It'll go to highs of 24 and lows of 13. We're looking at a high of 27 today in Kisumu. It's partly cloudy at 20. Kakamega will go to highs of 26 today. Lows of 16 and partly cloudy conditions. Rain showers already happening in Mombasa. We'll go to highs of 28 today. The high will be recorded at 27 in Malindi. It's raining at 26. It's also raining in Kampala, stepping out of Kenya at 20. Highs of 25 and lows of 17. It's also raining in Dar es Salaam this morning at 25, highs of 29 and lows of 24, 8 degrees, getting chillier and chillier in Johannesburg. It'll get to highs of 19 and lows of 7. Light rain in Lagos at 28, highs of 31 and lows of 26. It's also raining in Kinshasa this morning, ringing in Monday. It'll go to highs of 30 and lows of 24. Out east into Beijing, it's sunny at 20, highs of 24 and lows of 13. It's 3 degrees and clear in Paris. It'll come to highs of 17 and lows of 10. It's 7 degrees and clear in London. Highs of 12 and lows of 8. 18 degrees in New York Sunday night. It looks like a warm Monday in New York. It go to highs of 27 and lows of 15.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
32 minutes after 6.
94.4.
Very many people are online this morning.
Ain't that the truth? Howard Walter says, bless up from Jamaica. Okay, I'm not sure which Jamaica this is, but okay. Good morning, Howard. Alex Mbogo is tuned in from Nyeri County. Charity Mina says, good morning. Milimani Estate, Nakuru tuned in. Rogers Lai, Sabalheri, County 001, Tukondani. Bade Ashley tuned in from Machakos, and Aisha Nasri is tuned in as well. Simon Villa listening in this morning, as is Joseph Hightowers. Robert Mbogo also tuned in from Mombasa. Nuruddin Chadas, good morning to you guys. Good morning to you, sir. Gasheri Wambijiwe, good morning and happy Monday, Spice. Well tuned in from Thika Road and ready for the ever healthy talks. Karibu Sana. Olo Caleb. Says, good morning and thank you, Eric. We also appreciate the SDA choirs. He says we can make a good choir, he being the fourth to join this quartet. Ndu can sing soprano, okay.
Right.
Eric tenor, CT bass, and himself as the alto. How are you seeing this coming along?
Coming along.
Bass ni wewe.
I understand what is being said. What I don't understand is whether we expected to just leave it at the discussion stage
Or actually come
or
and
actually
form a
try and
quartet.
sing, because I certainly cannot sing.
Kenya's problem is one, and we are Kenyans. Implementation. Very good plan, Olo.
Me, I can't sing.
Let's just be Kenyan.
Kenya.
Yes.
See, we already have two problems.
Kenyans can't sing. Kenyans can sing. I mean, the Kenyans who sing beautifully. I'm not one of them. I can't sing.
Although it's a good idea anyway, though.
No, it sounds like a really good idea. That's why I said if we want to leave it at that level, yeah, I think it has achieved its purpose. But to move to the next level, so to speak, and to ask someone to actually croon.
Ooh, crude even.
Yes.
Okay. Stacken Harron says good morning from Migori, and Levy Dennis is watching it live from Kilifi, the county, this morning, and says good job. Shirage Mwai, when one of the listeners talked about immunity, we ignore India and Brazil. We've been great consumers of fast food and fizzy drinks, and the problem is those countries, the young are becoming overweight. I don't know if that's exactly the problem in India and Brazil,
But you said,
but okay. And
you read that so fast. What did you say?
he said that one of the listeners talked about immunity. And I believe that was our brother from Wakijembe. We ignore India and Brazil as great consumers of fast food and fizzy drinks. And the problem in those countries, the young are becoming overweight, pointing to now the COVID issue. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the cause of the widespread COVID infections that we see in these two countries. But, okay.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and karibuni sana.
Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Happy May. CT, the proverb.
Right. Happiness is not perfected until it is shared.
Happiness is not perfected until it is shared. Okay. It's a good one.
You like it, huh?
Spread happiness.
Spread the love. Okay.
And the way to be happy is to
Make someone happy.
make someone happy.
And to have a little heaven down here.
Right?
Wow.
As long as I'm saying it, I'm good.
Yeah.
Just don't ask me to say
Don't
it.
ask you to sing
say
it.
No.
Say it, don't sing it. Okay.
Today in history, May 3rd, 1992, there's a photo on page 16 of The Nation. Today in history, Mr. Kenneth Stanley Njindo Matiba addresses the press at his Riara Ridge home upon return from the United Kingdom after an 11-month convalescent period in London. He claimed that there had been 4 attempts to kill him. There's a photo there of Mr. Matiba and several journalists who are keenly following what he's telling them. Okay, let's look at other newspaper headlines.
Quite a number of things being reported today, but looking at this special report in the Standard of women who suffer in the hands of their employers and looking towards the Middle East for work. It's not a new thing in the country, but now when you thought that it had, kind of stabilized rather, and that people were making sure that they knew where they were going, it really hasn't. There's stories of many young girls, rather young, not even just young, older women, middle-aged, Alice Kagea, Esther Wanjiro, Anne Wanjiro, Rebecca Chesang, Winnie Chepkogei, Halima, who have gone and, according to their stories, have suffered in the hands of their employers in the Middle East.
Right.
And they join thousands of women who continue to go, but these ones have come back and said they vow never to go back because the ways in which they have been treated in those countries have been deplorable. They said that there are many who have died in their place of employ. The employers have treated them extremely badly. 35-year-olds, 28-year-olds, 22-year-olds. They had to seek treatment at hospital at some point because they would either be sick during their employment and would not be taken to hospital. Others had died and the employers did not take care of them. We have people who say they are lucky to have come home alive. One said she had left the country because she had been promised through an agent that she could earn 25,000 shillings per month as a domestic employee in the Middle East, and she thought it was worth giving a try. But on getting there, she realized that this supposedly dream job in a dream country was only, the difference was that she met a hostile employer and later fell into the arms of a ruthless master.
Jesus.
So it's been terrible for a lot of these young women, and these stories that they are giving as recounts, and I'll quote, I was treated like a slave. Food was being rationed. I was not allowed outside the compound, and I could work from 9 a.m. to midnight, non-stop. Although the salary was paid promptly, she found life unbearable, and this is according to Auma. Whenever I fell sick, nobody bothered. My employer would insist that I continue working. Sometimes I would be given painkillers. I even developed breathing complications at some point. I knew I would die if I didn't act fast. One morning, she boarded a taxi, headed to the Saudi Arabia agent's office, where she demanded for assistance to be taken home. She was locked up in a correctional facility for 7 months for violating the contractual obligations she entered to with the agent. Eventually, she was released and plans made to have her travel back to Kenya, but she missed the plane and her luggage was sent to Qatar. I had not been prepared, so my luggage has disappeared to date. However, she was put on an outbound plane to JKIA last November, exactly 1 year after she quit her job. She arrived with nothing, but is grateful that she's alive to tell the story, and says that many young women who've gone to the Middle East and come out alive say the same thing, that they come back, they have nothing left, but they'd rather be at home with nothing than there with the promise of this.
The BBC highlighted this story, but their take on it and the angle that they brought in was even significantly worse.
Worse than this, yes.
Yes, because they were talking about slavery and how people actually get employed. And they were highlighting the stories of young women who came from the northern, western part of this particular continent and how they begin by starting work and they're traded, literally traded and bought.
Like on the auction.
Yes. Now, it's not a story that, well, the BBC highlighted it, but for some reason it is highlighted and then it dies down.
Just dies down quickly.
Usually, it doesn't mean it dies down. It means somebody is making sure
It's suppressed.
It's not talked
Yes,
about.
yes, it isn't.
Do you remember when I told you at the beginning of January when I took my mother to the airport and I saw these young girls, about 20 girls, the oldest
Yes,
would have
you
been
mentioned.
24. But you could see in their faces that, whatever they were leaving behind, they would rather go for whatever it is that would offer some kind of promise. But then what you're being told from people who've actually been there is that, yeah, you go hoping, it's 25,000 bob, right? Which is a far cry from what you would earn as a domestic worker here. And you would rather hop on that promise and go somewhere else. You should have seen the hope they had nothing on them, say for a backpack or something, but they knew that they were going to earn something that they would never dream of earning here. But then at that point, if somebody like Auma, for example, or these other women who are covered in this story, were to tell them at that point, do not go, I'm telling you, this is what you're going to end up in, they would never listen. They would never listen.
Yep.
They want this life. And even the agents who take them know. Because the gentleman who was with these women on that morning at 2 wasn't really bothered. He just wanted to make sure they get in the door, and he's gone. And when he walked,
he hands them
did
over
not
to
look
someone
back.
else.
He didn't look back.
Yep. It's somebody else's job from that point on. Basically, it's a very well organized program. And the sad bit about it is this is not the first time or the second or the third or the fourth or the fifth time that this particular issue is being highlighted. What is worrying is the government's response to this, because you don't seem to get actual specific response in terms of even programmatic response and saying, this is an issue and this is how we're going to deal with it. So anybody now who's going, there's a time they come, they crack down on the agents that are hiring people, taking them to Saudi Arabia, and then the agencies are all reopened, and then you find them. There's no clear communication, even saying, we now have a National Employment Authority, because that is there in the country. The National Employment Authority should be saying, this is what we are doing. We can help you secure employment through reputable agencies in Kenya, in Saudi Arabia, working with the Kenyan embassy in Saudi Arabia, and basically just ensure that Kenyans get jobs, yes, but they get good jobs and they're paid well and they come
They're
back.
treated well.
You know, Kenyans go to other parts of the world
Exactly.
and you hear positive things.
Exactly.
Okay? The issue of people going to the Middle East didn't start yesterday. For as long as I lived at the coast, I used to hear of it, but the stories were good.
Yeah.
People went there for employment, some having finished their Form 4, some not even finishing, for some even Standard 8. But they came back with some semblance of prosperity. They built their parents a house, they bought a vehicle, they did stuff.
Yeah.
So people will talk about Saudi. At some point, all that changed. It stopped being this place that people went to. And when you heard the stories, people lived in dormitories. I'm talking about the men, okay? But they would tell you, you know you have a contract for 3 years. But when those 3 years are over and you come back to Kenya, your life has changed.
You have a different life. 27 minutes to 7, let's take another break. Let's see how the roads are looking like this Monday morning. And then we look at other headlines. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
It's time to answer questions that are worthwhile. The Big Quiz Show is here. Register to play from the comfort of your home by SMSing the word JOIN to 23774. Then watch the live show on KTN every Sunday from 8 p.m. where you could have a chance to win a milli. The fastest and most accurate answers are guaranteed to win. The Big Quiz Show, Sundays at 8 p.m. only on KTN.
We've been all through it, you know. We go to school, study hard, get the much-deserved grades and celebrate our graduation. Then reality hits us. We get to the job market and we simply don't know where to start off. Thankfully, by visiting jobs.standardmedia.co.ke, your next career breakthrough could be a click away. Get the best in career advice, employment opportunities, internships, part-time jobs, CV writing and interview coaching. Give your career the much needed lift on jobs.standardmedia.co.ke.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Good morning. What is it serving up? Kiambu Road flowing well until Pangani. You get to the Pangani underpass and it's going to slow down some as you're trying to get into the city. Remember, Wangari Maathai Road is a good option for you to use while going in, so you should be all right. Mombasa Road, yes, we will see it getting a little bit crazier as the days tick by. Coming from SGR today, looks a little bit slow through till General General Motors as the road gets narrower and narrower, and we know that it's still closed between Nyayo Stadium and the Bunyala Road roundabout. So, going then towards Langata Road and then out towards Aerodrome or then out towards Bagavi Way. I think we're all used to that by now as an option to get into the city. Coming out of Westlands, looking at a bit slow. In Chiromo, there's an option for you to come out. You should be all right. It's not too terrible. Hotspots this morning that we're looking at: Mombasa Road, a little bit right there around Pangani, and then Jago Road coming from industrial area onto Landis. We're going to keep an eye on these for now. Talk to us should you need to this morning on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127. Let's see how this Monday morning turns out.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
To 7 called the look at the headlines continues. And so there's this story here. Excitement as Suluhu makes first Kenyan trip. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan is set to visit Kenya tomorrow, and that is exciting enthusiasts of regional integration who hope that she could help mend relations between the two countries. A tentative program released by the State House in Chamwino, Tanzania, said the president will hold bilateral talks with her host, President Kenyatta, before addressing a joint sitting of the National Assembly and the Senate. She'll also have a meeting with the business community, Kenya and Tanzanian business community. So this is a good thing to see the president of Tanzania making a visit to the country, and a number of issues that will be discussed in terms of looking at how to strengthen relations, trade relations between Kenya and Tanzania. Kenya is one of the biggest investors in Tanzania.
Yep.
And they recognize that. Now, the issue whether of mending relations, how do our relations broken down?
Mending? Oh, there has been some seesawing, my friend.
There was quite an issue there.
Not really.
Uh-huh. Why do you say not really, Eric?
Not really, because things, some little tiff here and there in terms of COVID and all, but all those things were being ironed out as they progressed. Remember? As we speak, Kenyans traders can cross over into Tanzania. Tanzanian trucks can cross over into the country. I mean, those are just some issues here and there. The president of Tanzania, the late Magufuli, and Uhuru were in talking terms. They met. Uhuru went to visit the president. They spoke. It is said the president was treated briefly in Nairobi. So I think putting an issue of mending relations is taking it a tad too far.
Really?
I think so.
You know,
I think that is taking.
Right,
I don't expect anything that will be different between how Suluhu and Kenyatta relate with how Magufuli and Kenyatta related, or how Kenya and Tanzania relate now with how Kenya and Tanzania related a couple of months ago.
There will be a difference because it's a different person.
But not in terms of the relation, not in terms of saying, before this we had difficulty in addressing a couple of issues. Now we'll have a better way of addressing a couple of issues.
Then why
mending relations is Kenya and Somalia? Now that is mending relations.
But did we even have a problem with Somalia?
Right now we have a problem in Somalia because it has been brought up by the president of Somalia.
The president of Somalia.
And is reported as to IGAD and all,
Yes.
And we have a case with Somalia at the International Court of Justice. Now there you can say there's a diplomatic tiff, clear, well-documented, official diplomatic tiff. We have our ambassadors have been recalled. We have an issue. There we can talk about mending relations. Kenya and Tanzania, we are mending nothing. Our ambassador is in Dar es Salaam and Dodoma. Very well. Their ambassador is here in Nairobi. Very well. We have taken over from TZ as the chair of the EAC.
So
we
you're
are doing
saying
well.
essentially it's just clearing
It's just
the
a
air.
wrinkle that needs to be smoothed over.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
You get my point, huh? I have an issue here.
Okay.
There's an advert. It's not a story. It's an advert. I don't know whether it's also in the Standard. I'm sure it could be there. By the Kenya Revenue Authority. It's a public notice. Intended deregistration and cancellation of PINs. Pursuant to blah, 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 the Kenya Revenue Authority would like to notify the public that taxpayers who are registered under VAT Act 2013 and Income Tax Act Cap 470 laws of Kenya are required to file their returns under respective laws. Failure to file tax returns unless cause is shown to the contrary, the Commissioner of Domestic Taxes shall have the PINs deregistered and cancelled from the KRA system at the expiration of 30 days from the date of this notice. 30 days from today. You haven't filed your VAT returns, your income tax returns, and you're registered for those obligations, your PIN cancelled, deregistered. Forget it. Taxpayers are also encouraged to take advantage of the voluntary tax disclosure program and apply, disclose, and pay their outstanding liability with a relief on interest and penalties. A list of all PINs that are intended for deregistration is available on the KRA website, kra.go.ke. What do you understand by that?
If you don't pay taxes, then you will never
file returns.
If you don't file your returns, then essentially your ability to then hold a certificate as tax compliant is removed.
No, your PIN is removed. You cannot transact.
Yeah, exactly. You can't transact.
Your PIN
you will not be able to
is deregistered.
You will not be able to earn legally, at least. You will not be able to earn legally.
How are they going to stop you from conducting your business? Let me ask.
You know, for you to transact, you put your PIN. Remember
Signing of contracts and
remember
things
banks,
like
all your banks have your PIN now linked to them. Okay? For you to operate a bank account, you must have a PIN. Without a PIN, the bank basically, the next step would be the obligation is, if this is not an account holder with a PIN, then
they close your account.
Yes. For you to transact, selling a piece of land, transferring any property, PIN. Without PIN, transaction onge.
Why are they taking this punitive measure, you feel?
Because people are not complying.
Filing returns.
If you are required to file your VATs every 20th of every month, VAT returns.
As a business person?
Yes. If you are registered for income tax is everybody. You're a company, income tax. You're an individual, income tax. Individuals, income tax by the 30th of June.
Businesses was this last week.
Businesses, income tax is regular.
Regular. It's on the 20th of each month.
Every
month, yeah.
Nothing like at it once per year.
Not June 30th
Talking
like
about
the rest
that,
of us.
something interesting. Yeah? The University of Nairobi and Kenyatta University have had their accounts frozen by KRA.
Oh, nice. Why?
Well, apparently, they haven't been remitting statutory deductions running into billions of shillings, which have accumulated for years.
Right.
Good grief.
Yes, of course, both chancellors, the vice chancellors are saying, well, they have some arrangements with the KRA, because the issue of salaries being paid at the end of the month have come into being, okay? Now, the proof of this particular pudding as to whether, yes, matters have been resolved will be simply to ask people who work at the University of Nairobi whether they've been paid their salaries for this month.
Or not.
But the even bigger question is, how on earth do you deduct money from your employees and then you don't remit it?
Then you don't hand it over.
How?
Because shouldn't it be an immediate one go?
Actually,
one
yes.
Go.
It's deducted.
And it should just go.
You're given time, but until the 15th of the new month, by which time you should have remitted it. It's known.
Yeah, but to me, it would just seem so easy that this, that it is national, collector. You've taken it from individuals, right? Just hand it over immediately to save yourself. Because I realize that a lot of institutions don't hand it over because they want to use those funds for other things in the meantime.
Yeah.
And hopefully by that time, the 15th, they would have sorted it out. But it doesn't happen. And you say, okay, we'll do it next month and then add it up. Billions, years. That's what you get.
Pro-rems.
Actually, they're saying Kenyatta University has the highest debt, 3.4 billion, followed by the University of Nairobi at 1.4 billion.
And this is just statutory. Okay.
Yes.
This is employees' pays.
Yes, pay as you earn.
Okay.
Now, you're not going to say that they've not been paying their
Cash flow
employees.
management.
My friend, it's deducted at source. It's not something you negotiate every month.
Can I not take it this month? I pay in July.
Taken.
Yeah. No.
But what I find interesting, though, is that one of the solutions that the universities have proposed to help solve this problem is to raise the fees. They're reading from the same economic handbook as the government, isn't it?
There is the fees,
Okay, so
because we need cash. You know, we don't have money, and KRA wants the money.
we need to pay KRA.
A very good question that John is raising, is asking. These employees, every June, every year, they need to, by end of June, they need to file their income tax returns. So what have they been filing? For you to file that, you need to get a P9 form from your employer.
Yes, you do.
So you get your P9, but you see, that's so very simple because the employer will show. It's just
You just print it out.
They're just getting that from the
Yes,
payroll.
because it's deducted.
Payroll shows that you were deducted this much. So you just go and file and say, this.
Boom. 2
So
minutes.
that's pretty straightforward. I get it. Hey, let's see how that goes. At last, the 6 billion shillings affordable housing project in Buxton, Mombasa has taken off. The president was scheduled to launch it on Saturday. I don't know how the organizers of this actually thought of the president launching it on Saturday with everything else. Mombasa is outside the zone. 2, Saturday is May 1st. May 1st is celebrations for Labor Day and they happen at a specific spot. But now, so the president did not go to do the groundbreaking on Saturday. And the developer, Sulema Shabal, says they have already started. The program had already kicked off. Shabal has promised that the 1,900 housing units will be completed by May next year. The project will have 600 one-bedroom units, 700 two-bedroom units, 600 three-bedroom units. According to the developer, the project will lead to the creation of more than 750 jobs directly and 3,000 others indirectly. So we know Shabal. You own a house.
I did not know that was the next question that was coming.
Well, actually,
okay.
You own a house.
they are going to be selling those houses. So if you want to buy off-plan, this is a good time.
This is the time to do it.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's a commercial venture, and they will want to sell the units. And if you feel you're able to afford one, nothing's stopping you from pitching not a fit.
Good one. Good FS this.
Today's Monday, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
I meant pitching a bid.
Pitching a bid.
Of course you did. Okay.
I'm sure there's communication on this, on how people can then make their reservations for this and all. Just have a conversation and look out for the developer and see how you can take advantage of this. Maybe there are also those conditions of first come, first serve, or first come Mombasa resident, first serve, and all.
Not necessarily.
That should be the case, man.
Not necessarily. 1,700 units. Chief.
Only.
This is a commercial venture. You have money, you buy.
You buy.
Yes. They are preferential. There's already preferential treatment being given.
For the residents.
Yes, there is.
And
And there'll also be some for the county. Remember, these were county houses and the county generated revenue from these particular houses. Okay? So that has already been taken care of.
Yeah.
I am certain that employees of the county will have some preference. But the rest will go to the public.
Kweli.
Yes.
Kweli. Ukitaka nyumba, tafutana na huko Shabal and the Buxton project. 11 minutes to 7 o'clock. Kenya's biggest conversation continues shortly. Good morning.
Have you seen the? Am I like?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone in Wasingishu was asking me what channel is SpiceFM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you.
What a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
But it would look like there's been repeated falsehoods, and they will not help the war on drug cheats. This, according to CS Amina Mohammed. Kenya's sports ministries say they are taking seriously allegations of systematic doping in the country. You know, the Tokyo Olympics have started, at least in the swimming and the diving, and this is now all around what will happen with Kenya's athletes. This following a recent email.
Olympics have started?
Yes.
What?
It started with a little fanfare, but you know, they've started.
Okay.
Mm.
Wow. Go on.
Yeah, in fact, that's what I was doing this weekend, actually. Anyway.
You were watching the Olympics?
Yes, watching diving, synchronized diving.
That synchronized thing is... yeah.
Very interesting.
That's very interesting, yeah. So
Okay.
I've missed it.
You have.
Until 4 years.
No, still going on till next weekend.
Equal YouTube.
No, but it's still going on.
And I want live.
Yes, live on YouTube.
Okay.
It's still going on, I repeat. Anyway, this follows a recent email by the German journalist Christian Rode from the German television network to the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, seeking their comment on allegations that the agency and the Athletics Kenya are engaged in a systematic cover-up of doping cases. This even as a World Anti-Doping Agency report in 2018, following a 2-year study, concluded that there were no signs of Kenya operating in institutionalized doping. The report, released on September 27, 2018, said the doping practices of Kenyan athletes are unsophisticated, opportunistic, and uncoordinated. It added, doping in Kenya is drastically different from other doping structures discovered elsewhere in the world, with the claims appearing to target 2 of Kenya's institutions tasked with policing the vice, AK and ADAK. Despite clearance by the global watchdog, the sports ministry, under the leadership of Cabinet Secretary Ambassador Amina, is not taking the allegations lying down. Once the email from Rode was brought to its attention, the sports ministry enlisted the DCI, especially that the allegations were coming up just before a major international competition, which is the Olympics. Wow. The investigations have since led to the arrest of an individual the ministry termed as an alleged informant. So what has happened here is that there would be a would-be whistleblower who is talking to this global body and saying, look, guys, there's something going on in Kenya. And the way in which they're going about this, you wouldn't really be able to find it amongst Kenya's athletes unless you went and did your investigations a lot closer and with more scrutiny. And just before the Olympics, we're basically telling you, keep your eyes open because there could be something amiss with Kenya's athletes. And Ambassador Amina is not very happy with this at all.
There has been some kind of sustained, push towards that direction. Banning athletes here. Remember Asbel Kiprop?
Yes.
1,500 meters champion, number of times even Olympics and all. And he got barred because of doping, and he has really fought that. He said, come on, I have never doped. And he has sustained that conversation. And if you just look at what that does to these athletes. Somebody wakes up every early morning, 3 a.m., they're out on the road running, coming back home, living their lifestyle, preparing for a competition, and then you tell them, no, you've been doping.
Yeah, and what does this do for the athletes who will participate in the Olympics this year? Lining up, doing whatever it is, because it's not just physical, it's also psychological. Yep. And so everybody else is looking at you with that. And this is one of the things Amina is saying. Yeah. What does this do for our athletes, for example? You've said this a few weeks too. What does it do for them psychologically? How then are they supposed to perform when everybody has this, looking at them through this lens of these folks are doping?
There's something that always rears its head when it comes to doping because it always involves something they call banned substances.
Yep.
Okay? Now, what you're told, if you've ever seen how athletes train, one of the things that they will also endure is pain.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, whatever it is that is administered to them, it is not that they do not receive drugs. But those who are specialists in administering these things must ensure that they don't fall into the category of what has been what?
Banned.
Yes. Because the understanding seems to be they help enhance performance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this question, even as we raise it, and as it's brought into being, the truth of the matter is that it's going to be a controversial issue for many years.
Absolutely, it will. And we've had people who were banned. I remember most recently, Maria Sharapova, when she was banned for 2 years, it was said that she was taking this substance, sure, for her immune issues, and it helped her as an athlete. What they got her on is that the amount of this banned substance within this supplement that she was taking, and she said, look, my doctor gave it to me, I didn't know. My doctor gave it to me, and I would assume that I hire this doctor, and he knew what he was doing. So a lot of them are saying, well, we're taking these supplements for the things that you're talking about, pain, making sure that your immunity is up to scratch. But then we are tested, and then we are found that this is the case. What do we do?
It's usually very, there's banned substance and then there's performance enhancers. So when you actually take performance enhancers, then that's a different issue. When you are here and I remember the scandal surrounding the entire delegation from Russia.
Russia, yeah.
And just saying, all these Russians and now the Russian Federation and all of you blah, 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 have been doping. And you could see the political hand of things being played out here. It was more political than sport. So now Russian athletes go to the Olympics and what's that country called? Unrepresented, unregistered something.
It's like they're always under cloud. The greater USSR, okay, was always in the spotlight. Yeah. Whether it was the bodybuilders, whether it was the 100-meter, the short distance races. Yeah. But unfortunately, this whole thing, much as it sounds like it is something that is useful, it is fraught with the suspicion that often surrounds something that can easily be controlled and used as a weapon by those who want to.
The political conspiracists will tell you that the reason why is because there was a direct threat, sports-wise, to the United States. That they had athletes who were up and coming, and now they would topple this American champion that had been there for the longest time. And now other countries are coming and taking, countries like China, countries like the Russians coming out and taking those top spots, and the Americans didn't like it, so you would come up with a way to fight them.
But remember, when you're talking about China, you're talking about Russia, these are countries where the government takes personal and direct interest in these matters.
Absolutely, yes.
And they put the facilities they have at their disposal of these athletes.
Yep, and that's why they send so many athletes to the Olympics.
Yes,
that clearly they'll be top in terms of the number of gold medals.
You spread them everywhere,
even in sports you never heard of.
Yes, you make sure you have somebody competing.
There's a Russian here, there's a Russian there, there's a Chinese here, there's a Chinese. So the medal standings will always have Russia, China, and then the rest of
in the 90s, the medal standings were just for the United States all the time.
As we conclude this, there is some development in Somalia. The president, Mohammed Abdullahi Mohammed, known as Farmajo, has relaunched talks over the holding of fresh elections in a move welcomed by the opposition following the country's worst political crisis in years. Remember, he had pushed and he had gotten parliamentary approval to extend his tenure by another 2 years and say, let's not hold elections. Things are not certain here, all right? That brought about a lot of conflict and there was bloodshed in Mogadishu. Now he has come back and he said, okay, Mr. Prime Minister, please organize elections, fresh elections, as soon as possible. Now, this is going somewhere positive. Like you're saying, the issue of Somalia and a leader's credibility and then their kingdom falling, this is one of those. If an election is held today, what's the likelihood of Farmajo coming back as president or even getting the support of the regions that need to back him up? Well, let's have a conversation about press freedom, information as a public good or for public good. And in the next hour, we'll be speaking with the Media Council of Kenya CEO, David Omoyo. Today is World Press Freedom Day. Your views on this are also welcome. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on SpiceFM and online. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
All right, so not looking too terrible on Mombasa Road, at least not right now, but it will slow down right around the SGR, then heading towards General Motors, and then slows down again going towards South Sea. An accident along Gong Road today, opposite the racecourse. One pedestrian hit by two vehicles on the same spot this morning, guys. Doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look pretty at all. So handle with care and approach with caution this morning. Traffic is not too bad, though, along Gong Road. Okay, so Wangari Maathai Road is what will offer you some good reprieve, heading from Thika Road as you head towards the city centre. Use that as an option because around Pangani it's clogs up a little bit. Jogo Road is where it's very slow. On Jogo Road, all the way from Hamza towards the roundabout at the City Stadium and then onto Landis Road, also joining with traffic that's coming from industrial area. That's all pretty slow this morning. That's what we're looking at, guys. The bypasses, Eastern, Southern, Northern and Red Hill looking good as a longer options in and out of the city, but one without traffic. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Talk to us there or text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation
It's 2.5
Room,
minutes after
the
7.
only
Kenya's
way
biggest
to start
conversation
your day.
continues. Welcome to the second hour of the show. We're here until 10 a.m. C.T. Muga begins with the day's proverb.
Happiness is not perfected until it is shared.
Happiness is not perfected until it is shared.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Spread the love.
That is certainly one way of looking at it.
Love brings happiness.
Well, not always.
Not always.
No, you've heard of the term heart pangs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The panging of the heart. Yeah.
Okay. So let's have a conversation about World Press Freedom Day. That's what we're commemorating today. The global media has had every year we celebrate this particular day. There's a lot that happens every year. You look at what is it that the media has done in the last 1 year. Amidst COVID-19 pandemic, amidst everything else that's going on in the world, have the issues that matter to the people being highlighted? Have the issues that people want to know about been highlighted? Has the media actually told the stories that ought to be told? Or has the media not failed in some ways to tell some stories? And what would be the reasons why the media has failed in some of those areas? Has the media faced the kind of support that it deserves from those in authority? Media, those in power, some would say that they're required to mix. Others would say that they're like oil and water. They shouldn't mix. There should be a clear separation between them. All those things are just basically big conversations. But to help us have this conversation this morning, let's bring in the Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya, David Omoyo. He joins us now on the line. Good morning, David.
Morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thanks. Happy World Press Freedom Day. It's a rather long one, but good to meet the guys in the newsroom. That.
Yes, happy World Press Freedom Day to you too as well. What is the theme for this year's World Press Freedom Day and why?
Information is a public good is the theme. Mm-hmm. Usually the theme is set a year before by UNESCO, and I mean the entire global setting, is that journalists and the media engage in spreading information, informing, educating, and entertaining. and that is basically a common need of the community. So, therefore, when you allow the press to operate freely, you're allowing them to access information. You're not attempting to guard journalists or the media from providing this information to the public. By doing that, then you're protecting press freedoms.
Is there a downside to that, to information as a public good? Are there cases where information then is being spread but is not for public good or as a public good?
Of course, everything has a downside to it. I will reply your question by reading a quote here I'm seeing from Eric Tinge. The greatest challenge to media freedom is self-induced. Generating content with little regard for what audiences want, disregarding the ethics of the profession, not maintaining high professional standards, and not paying attention to the business dimension of the news business. So there is, while you provide all this information, sometimes you start by providing this information, then forget that all freedoms have their own, challenges. You're supposed to appreciate what others want. John Mahama, former president of Ghana, spoke about journalism should not promote gender violence, should never be used to extol terrorism or to deny human rights. It should also not encourage religious and racial bigotry, and it should not be a tool for genocide. So while you have all the liberty to provide information, there are certain little challenges that we must really appreciate, that if you just provide information as an absolute right, while it is in itself, you must also be conscious of the society where you live in. You must be conscious of their culture, the people, their feelings, their love, the likes and dislikes and all that, the families, all that. So while information is a public good, all information is good for the public, you must also appreciate that there are certain times when journalists are called upon to step back and hold certain information when they realize that from time to time it's better when certain information is not provided for the sake of either some of the subjects or some of the audiences that are being discussed or spoken about in the media content, either the radio, TV, or newspaper or internet article.
David, some of those elements that you've mentioned, is it possible then to share information that satisfies all of these bins, satisfies commercial, satisfies the public, satisfies the business, satisfies the powers that be? Is it possible then to provide information on a daily basis, regular by media, that keeps everybody in this kind of satisfaction equilibrium?
It is impossible to please everybody. If you start now pleasing everybody, then you're on a serious downward trend. That's why we speak about general media ethics, or rather the code of ethics. So know that some of these are principally unspoken. Like when you speak about business and all that, that's about ownership and how you get the financing to pay your journalists and all that. It's really beside that. But then the issues about satisfying the public, they talk about good journalism. It comforts the afflicted and afflicts the comforted. If you are, for example, going out to highlight issues and bring those in authority to question, definitely you're going to annoy them, and then you're going to please the masses. So from time to time, also reminding people of their responsibilities. We even have cases where the media has to come out and tell people, like I want to speak about this COVID-19 situation, guys, you're misbehaving. You're not following COVID protocols, you're not social distancing and all that. So it is possible, but not in the same package. It's like a basket full of fruits. You will have to do one thing and leave out another. You'll have to annoy one person and please the other one and all that. So it's really a mix of a bouquet of good things with certain implications. If you're reminding people to be responsible, they won't be too happy, but remember that it is their duty to be responsible and all that. So it is possible, but not all in one, not like in one bulletin. You have to balance, knowing that this bulletin will push this one, then it will remind this person of their responsibility. We're going to annoy those who are in authority. We are going to please the masses, or we're going to annoy the masses, but now government has to act because they are not behaving and all that. So it's really this balance that you have to be aware of all the time.
Okay. So now, I think it's a question that has been asked for as long as the term has been in existence. When you look at press freedom, today, 2021, has the definition changed from what it was from the very first time that it was coined? And to say that when we say we're looking for press freedom, what exactly And have those boundaries shifted, moved a little bit, or is it just on the same premise that it was from the very beginning?
I would say that the pillars remain. The pillars of press freedom remain. What has happened is that how we view it and how we exercise it could have changed. Because press freedom really is about you will let the media do their job. The journalists will go out, take information, verify it, and then publicize it. That has remained. What has happened now is that maybe initially, if people do not want journalists to do their job, they could go out with a stone and throw it at them. Now they find a way of therefore not advertising there or calling the employer to do one or two things. Or now people no longer bother with the editor who is running the story of the journalist. They call the editor. I mean, the journalist in the field, initially people would bother about, let these journalists don't try the story. Now they realize, no, I will tell the editor up there not to run the story and all that. So the pillars of press freedom remain. They are principally universal and all that. But how now people get around it is that it has changed a bit. Because apart from that, people have also found a way of doing fake news, and especially the deep facts where you manufacture a story that people like to contradict, and sometimes you gain more traction and more followers than the real story itself. So press freedom, the principles and the beliefs and the foundations of it remain, but how people then get around it is what has changed, I think, due to several factors.
If we're talking of press freedom, Mr. Omoyo, there is freedom as it is perceived by those who earn their keep and a living from this particular enterprise, and there are those who are our partners in that they consume what it is that is produced by the media. Now, I understand that there has to be a balance, but what I sometimes have difficulty understanding is you are head of a council that deals with these media matters. How then do we hold our own accountable in maintaining the rigorous principles that we are supposed to maintain as we ply our trade on a daily basis?
I think it's principally what we do every day. You have the Complaints Commission, we have accreditation processes. From time to time, we have recorded our accreditation cards and all that. Number one, the foundation of press freedoms and the MCK Act, and especially the Complaints Commission, is that any matter that pertains to the conduct and practice of justice to be dealt with by journalists themselves, or rather the Media Complaints Commission. That means that we are not allowing the local chief or police officers to take up matters of displaying journalists. So this matter of, we have a code of ethics which journalists follow. We think that from time to time, as in any other profession, we have a few times when journalists operate outside these guidelines. But the important is that then the Complaints Commission and our ethics processes must be empowered to be able to rise up and act on these matters. But number two, most critical, is that self-regulation demands that the editorial processes within a media house have enough systems to appreciate, number one, to facilitate press freedom, and to be able to look back, get the apologies, get the withdrawals or reprimands when we realize that these challenges have been done in-house. That means that you come to the Media Council as literally a last option. So I think going to Banamuga's question is about self-regulation internally from the very point of call. In the newsroom there, your producers and editors must realize we had a problem here, we need to apologize or withdraw, or we need to retrain our staff and all that. In case that fails, then we have the Complaints Commission and all that. That means that it's an internal self-regulatory disciplinary process that also shields us from allowing, I will use the word, the vagaries of the world. We say that editors report to the local chief or the local OCS and all that, it gets chaotic and all that. So it's the way that ensuring that there is accountability in journalistic work by the journalists and editors, without then allowing people out there to come and remind us that we violated, so that we know ourselves that there has been a problem and we're dealing with it.
There is also the responsibility to those who consume our products in getting them to know, understand in proper details in a balanced way what happens in the nation. Now, why am I bringing this thing in this roundabout way? We also report sometimes in our media outlets of situations where there seems to be some sort of disagreement between us and, say, the government. People feeling that we have either reported something unfairly or we've spoken about an event. What brought this to my attention was I was reading an article in the Star that was written by a gentleman by the name of Gordon Osen, and he gave certain examples of incidences that have occurred, and the reporter has reported the incidences as they saw them and with the background. And then there has been a backlash. How do we balance these backlashes? Because sometimes we may report things that are not very, should we say, they are not convenient. And
okay.
Yes.
Good word.
Well, I like the use of the word convenient.
Yes.
Well, I start by asking, convenient to who? Well, number two, we need to appreciate, one, that art of government is a tricky one. We have sometimes matters of national security. Sometimes we have matters where we have investigations ongoing. It's an ongoing police investigation into a crime or terrorism. Sometimes we have protection of the family. Sometimes we have, deep state. Sometimes the act of diplomacy. Government is trying to flex a muscle with another country for diplomatic functions and all that, which now you see it is part of a bigger scheme. So, and the reporter, without getting a deeper analysis of what is happening, could jump into it and immediately put a story that then either jeopardize the people doing investigation, or you threaten, policemen out at war, or you find a way that you have already released information that wasn't ready for release, or sometimes for what I would call some little patriotic, patriotic functions. A nation state is doing something so that they can get certain leverage against either a neighboring state or another, foreign country and all that, and the local media does something that then betrays that. So a few times, art of government is a little tricky, and that is why, especially in established media houses or other established democracies, we have seriously experienced journalists, like you say, people attached to state out, for example, people attached to parliament, people attached to ministries and all that, are people who can, from time to time, understand the bigger picture so that you don't just look out and engage in basic reportage. Basic reportage is what, where, when, and why, and all that. But then there's a little more analysis. This is what is happening for this and this. Sometimes you have the principle of embargo. You will have access to this information. You cannot release it until we conclude this. You know we're going with you. We are going to, like sometimes the armed forces are going to engage in this and this. You are aware. You get access to all this, but you can only release this information at such and such time. So from time to time, that we have basic reporters, journalists, reporters running around and doing something, but another time we miss the point of experienced journalists, people who understand that any time when you see things happening this way, then this is what is going to happen. So it's good to hold it for a day or two, or sometimes a week, or sometimes to get really get the information flow to the very end. And I would throw in a case or two. I know that in the UK, for example, there is an agreement between Her Majesty's government and the media. In Sweden, we have an agreement between the police and media about not reporting on ongoing active cases where you will keep providing a link. It's like people rely on the media to know where the police are going next because the media don't. So there's all those things about getting a little more experience and getting people to look at the bigger picture beyond the rush to break the news and grab the headline.
Two issues that I'd like to raise here, David. One of them is the relationship between the Media Council of Kenya as a self-regulating body of the media, and then the Communications Authority. And the reason I'm raising that is because recently we have seen two media houses being penalized by the Communications Authority on account of what they have carried on air. And then what you raised about the Complaints Commission, which will handle complaints that have come from the public on stories that have been aired by a media house. So where do you draw the line between complaints coming to the Complaints Commission and the Communications Authority taking action on a media house?
Good question. I didn't set up the Media Council, neither did I set up the Communication Authority. So from time to time, we have certain gaps and overlaps in the legal and regulatory process. This morning, at exactly 9:30 a.m., with the Speaker of the National Assembly, the PS and all that, we are launching a book on the legal and regulatory gaps in the media in Kenya, whereby we have the Media Council Act as an absolute act that should guide this. Then you get another set of almost 17 laws, the Penal Code, Newspapers Act, the Computer Cyber Crimes and all that, which want to speak to the work of the media. So there is that has been anticipated. Working together with agencies and friends of the media, we have done a very comprehensive scan of the regulatory environment in Kenya and seen which laws started all over the Constitution of Kenya, the Penal Code, and others that interfere with the work of the media. And the whole idea is try to get them, aligned. That's why this morning we have the Speaker and MPs, we have the CS, we have the media stakeholders, editors, and all that saying we have the Media Council Act as standalone. We would wish that the Media Council Act remains the law within which media will operate. When you have a clause somewhere in some terrorism law mentioning media, then there's another clause over there in some computer thing, then we have a CA thing about licensing and frequencies, then talking about content and all that. It becomes very hard because even from time to time we have found a case where we have duplication of roles. We have the cases of several media houses where we write a show cause letter from the Media Council, and the guys tell us, "Oh, look here, guys, we have 2 other show cause letters from 2 state agencies."
Yeah.
The KFCB has written a warning, and the CA has also issued a statement just that we need to mjibu nani. So that is anticipated, but we are at least seized of the matter, and that's where we have at least scanned. We see the laws that we have an issue, and we are handing the laws to Parliament this morning, telling Parliament, "Look here, please align these laws so that they can operate."
Okay. The second bit is with regards to accreditation. Now we see a number of, especially radio stations, where we have presenters who are not trained journalists, but they've been hired because of their talents that they have. And for example, recently when you had an issue about a certain radio show, the whole issue of accreditation came up. Does the Media Council of Kenya accredit the people who are on-air talent? And then for you to be on air, do you go through any form of training from the Media Council to get that accreditation? Where do you stand on this particular matter?
Now that I know the case you're speaking about, and I can mention it on the platform from Radio Africa issue. Number one, that we had matters coming up 2 weeks after the specific individuals named had gone through a comprehensive 5-day ethics training by the Media Council.
Yeah.
So I want to stress that the people who are violating ethics, it's not lack of training. It isn't. I mean, everybody knows what should or shouldn't be spoken. Everybody knows you don't need ethics training to know what you can speak in family time. You don't need as long as you grew up in a society where people respect each other. You understand what can be said at what time of the day when children are listening or whatever. So it's a lie to pretend that it's lack of training. Number two, when you look at ethics violations, you'll be surprised that trained people are misbehaving more than they're trained. It's really like the crisis. People who have the best training in journalism, ethics training, they are violating that. But thirdly, we have now made it compulsory, and we had started last year, of course, COVID happened. We should try not to blame COVID too much. That we do, the moment you have someone going on air, there's a mandatory ethics training, and they're given accreditation, but it's based on the honor of the media house. When you undertake journalism training, based on your training and qualification, you get your accreditation. But when you have, either a good lawyer who is an analyst or a good DJ or,
good economist,
MCs and all that, you undergo ethics training and the ethics training is one of the courses that the MCK Academy offers virtually indoors. It's a 14-day course for anybody to understand. But I want to stress that the issue of violation of media ethics isn't about lack of training. What we have seen trained and experienced journalists do on this trip is way worse than the untrained MCs and comedians on our airwaves. It's really about ethics. And always remember, ethics is not about training. It's not academic. It's about values and culture and all. So you cannot say that you have no values, or you need to go to university to understand the values of a people, or to respect family values, or to respect people's religion, or to just be reasonable to gender and all that. It's simply being generally disciplined and rogue.
One of the things that seems to always be a sore point when we talk about ethics and journalism and freedom is, yes, okay, fine, people are trained, people understand where they should halt or where they should curtail or bring to order these mass freedoms that they're involved in. And then there's something very simple. It's called the truth. Where do you balance what you know to be the truth and what you think is ethical and what you think is appropriate. How do you balance it? And what does the council that you head, how do they prepare and train journalists in understanding this balance?
Boss, what is ethics?
It's a value system.
Yes, moral principles.
Yes.
Right now, there are so many things that that you will never say near the mic. True or false?
You would be amazed at how many there are. Chances are you won't be amazed. There are truly many. the things that go on through my head and the things I want to say and the way I have to struggle to ensure that it is said in a certain way, yes.
Yes, so that's why we're saying that it's not about what you go out and say. It's about withholding, knowing when to say it, knowing how to say it. That's what we talk about, like gender-sensitive reporting. It's not about not dealing with gender-sensitive reporting, isn't it? Considering national security in journalism work and all that. The whole idea is that, remember, morals and ethics are not written. It's about a reflection, looking at the implication of pros. Sometimes you get, and you know that if I put this out, I will cause more confusion. Maybe I need to wait for it. Or sometimes you realize that I have this news of this politician, but I'm informed that he's in hospital. Let's allow the family to do this, to the person to heal and all that. Or this family is in mourning, so we cannot just put this out on their face. Because, sometimes it's about holding back, sometimes it's how you word it, sometimes it's how you phrase it and all that. So it isn't a black-white matter, if it's a lie, it's a lie. You are engaging in, fake news and all that, that's clear. But issues of ethics and morals is about your personal consideration. You reflect about the issue. This is good, it's big news, yes, but I think it's family time. People are having breakfast or dinner, I can't say this. Or I know this and this about this guy, but I don't think it's appropriate to say it because it's it's private life. We don't need to publicize it and all that. So there are all those really that ethics and morals it's not a straight line. It's about in every situation you use about the principles, the values in which you have grown, and put them to consideration so that you're able to make decisions that really are for greater common good. So that rushing out to break news all the time may be exciting and all that, but it's not always. A few times the impact of that breaking news in society sometimes is more negative than the news you broke. And I think even in the newsrooms, even from where you sit, many times you had an issue and you decide to hold it back for a while so that it can ripen or that it can go full cycle, so that then it can be completed.
How far? Still looking at the ethics and morals that you've talked about, and then also look on the other side and looking at really press freedom. How far do you feel journalists should push specific agendas that may have high levels of sensitivity when pushing for a story, pushing for the truth, like you say?
It depends. What is the impact of this story in public, in governance and public good? A few times you will push very much because it's an investigative story about corruption in a ministry, because when this process happens, then people will lose medication, within the ages of medication, expired drugs and all that. Some stories have so much implication. Like, remember, we do journalism for public good. So if you realize that this story if story remains undone, then there will be so much, impact on the people. People will lose lives, or people will lose medication, or people will lose livelihoods. Then you push. But a few times you realize that you don't push too much. These are private matters. Let people be. So there's no specific line about how far you can push. The measure of how far you can push is the impact, the probable or possible impact of a story when done. That is what is critical, finding that this story is so big, this story is so important, the amount we are dealing with is so high, or the number of people being affected is this high, therefore we can push more. Or say this story is little, if we don't get, if you don't get the story, you can leave it at that, because there are not too many people affected, there isn't too much involved and all that. So really, it's a measure all the time. It's not a line that exists somewhere. It's something that you have to consider case by case all the time.
We've been having a conversation with David Omoyo, the Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya, celebrating World Press Freedom Day with the theme, Information as a Public Good. You're having a lot of celebrations this the coming 2 days, David, right? A number of events lined up. You can just highlight some of the key ones.
We have from this morning we are launching the legislative review that I said, because we have studied the laws that govern the media and we have seen the challenges they have present there. Of course, then we are also launching COVID-19 guidelines for journalists and media. We have other partnership principles we have done. You may have noticed we have been engaging in a lot of publicity for media, because people have been attacking media and saying, we did not know the journalists, so we want them to be easily visible from far. We have just finished the judging process, so tomorrow afternoon we have the annual Journalist of the Year award, where we award excellence in journalism, the best stories and all that, including reviewing the journalism standards, because we had more than 1,500, I think 1,200 stories submitted for review and all that. Therefore, then we get a chance to feedback to society about what the state of journalism is, the quality of journalism, how journalists are doing their work. So it's a series of events, and then we have several panels discussing gender in the newsroom, sustainability, what COVID-19 has done to the newsroom, how new financing models for journalism, convergence, technology, and all that. So it's really a series of events beginning this morning. Actually, it began yesterday, beginning this morning, and going up to tomorrow every morning. We have now the Journalist of the Year award. Unfortunately, we would not have a gala dinner because of COVID, but at least we'll be able to award, excellence in journalism, which we were not able to do last year.
Asante sana, and all the best to those that submitted their stories for judging. Wishing them all the best. Asante sana, David Omoyo, for speaking to us. Have a lovely day.
Asante sana. Thank you very much for the great job you're doing over there.
Asante.
Thank you.
28 minutes to 8 o'clock. Time for us to take a break, see what's happening on the roads, and then we look at other stories. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
24 teams, 12 host cities, 6 groups, all battling for one trophy. The long-awaited Euro 2020 is here at last upon us. The fans might not be within touching distance.
Good cross, Giroud attacks it and scores, and France are ahead!
But the atmosphere will only get to a fever pitch. From the 11th of June to the 11th of July, catch the tackles, the goals, and all your favorite football stars as the elite European nations go head-to-head. The Standard Group brings you the UEFA Euro 2020 tournament live across our channel.
Oh, what a wonderful goal!
As the official UEFA Euro 2020 free-to-air broadcast partner in Kenya, because we live for the game. And that's why at Standard Group, sports lives here.
SpiceFM.
It's getting hot in here.
Oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they are getting per year, how much inconvenience they are causing. As much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a full-leaser country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one chef working and the assistant chef wakati anatakana koroge unga nini hayuko.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Okay, so this is when it's picking up, guys, significantly so, on Mombasa Road, heading out towards the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. Very slow, right at that junction from Aerodrome, from Upper Hill, and then from Bunyala as well. very, very slow there. It seems to be a bit of a mix of things, trying to get out towards the city centre. So that is a mess that you don't want to be in. But if you're there, you're going to have to wait it out. The Southern Bypass offering some good vibes this morning, getting out into the city from Mombasa Road and then also from Langata Road to town. That looks pretty good. A longer route, but it works anyway. Coming off of Thika Road into the city, Pangani looks really slow. Then out towards Ngara, also very, very slow. Wangari Maathai Road will give you some good reprieve getting into the city. So use that as an option. Coming out of Westlands, you don't want to get stuck in town. Use Red Hill out towards the city. Again, a longer route, but it works as well. Jogo Road, all the way from Hamza, is still very slow this morning, guys, as you're trying to get to the City Stadium roundabout and out onto Landis. And then also coming from industrial area, going to see some stuck traffic there. Let's talk in a bit. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Let's see if you can find a good route for us, especially for these folks on Jogo Road. It's a crying matter this morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Okay, 24 minutes to 8. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. In the next hour from 8 o'clock, we will be talking about the next financial year's budget by the government. 3.6 trillion shillings is what Ukur Yatani, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, has signaled is going to be the budget for the next financial year, 2021-2022. They need to raise a lot of that domestically. How much is the country capable of generating as internal revenue from taxes, from levies, from other sources that the government uses to get money, including getting revenue from state-owned corporations and where it has invested as dividend. How much money can the government raise? So how much money is the government going now to raise from other external sources anyhow? We'll be having a conversation with Mr. James Muragori, who is the head of IPF Kenya. As we lead up to that, let's look at the economic conversation that has been happening over the weekend. Deputy President William Ruto has signaled a major departure from President Uhuru Kenyatta's economic model when he rolled out one that seeks to steer away from the 9 years of Jubilee government's economic decisions. He is keen to tap into the poor, the rural folk and the unemployed, and the Deputy President said he'd lead a conversation that will culminate in a national economic charter that embodies aspirations of Kenyans at the grassroots. This bottoms-up approach, however, has drawn reactions from politicians and economists, with some wondering, so why haven't you implemented this in this government where you are the Deputy President? In a statement that he released yesterday after a 3-day retreat with MPs from Mount Kenya region, Ruto said, "This is the new conversation. This is the new politics." The gist of his model is the empowerment of small businesses, increasing farmers' earnings, and creating an enabling environment that rewards hard work, nurtures creativity, and promotes initiatives for all to flourish. To ensure that an all-inclusive conversation takes root, we have agreed on a framework of engaging, beginning at the grassroots with farmers, entrepreneurs, traders, cooperatives, other producers, and business associations, encompassing all the key agricultural value chains, in particular tea, coffee, dairy, fresh produce, rice, and miraa. We've been having Uhurunomics. Now Ruto is saying he has Rutonomics coming up. If you give him the chance to be the president, the economic thinking will be bottoms up and not top down. When Ruto started talking about bottoms up economics, people laughed. Last week, when the President of America was addressing the joint sitting of Congress, he mentioned bottoms up economics.
He did.
So that's how we get out of the current quagmire that we are in as a world.
So essentially what we're looking at is spreading the economic power of the country to the masses.
You know, I really don't understand
Abi?
this.
I'm asking because
I
want to
honestly
understand.
don't understand what on earth they're talking about.
Because they're saying essentially, CT, that the majority of people in the country are poor. That a very few, so they're stating to us what we already know, that a very few people in the country, actually minority, are the ones who are able to get by. So if you're looking at making the country more economically viable, what you then must do is to put this economic power in the hands of the majority. That you must then make it possible for people who are not able to earn a daily bread to earn. That those who then will not have access to things like credit should have. That those who cannot go outside and earn a daily wage should then be able to earn. And beyond earning a daily wage, should actually have a sustainable mode of income. That's basically what they're saying. That the power to then be economically viable right now rests in the hands of a very few. And the only way you're going to be able to get the country to the next level is by taking this power and putting it in the hands of the majority of the population who currently do not have it. C'est ça?
Something like that.
Okay, so would I be wrong if I said that he's advocating for socialism?
I don't think you'd be very far off the point.
Then why don't I take a logical conclusion? Why stop with socialism when you can go to communism? Look, America has one of the, should we say, the most talked about devolved systems, political systems in the world. Okay? They have states. Those states are slightly more than just being semi-autonomous. COVID has indicated to us with clarity the sort of powers that the various states have in making laws and in determining how they go about their lives. We are trying to have a model of that particular ilk to work for our people. It's already devolved, all right? So when you devolve units, when you have devolved units like we do, the argument always was to ensure that you bring development to the people. That was the argument.
Yes.
Right.
I'm going to stop that argument there and ask myself a simple question, all right? As I listened to the president talking, giving his May Day, his Labor Day speech yesterday. The thing
Saturday.
Yesterday or today?
The other Saturday, which was
The other yesterday.
My apologies.
Right.
On Saturday.
Okay.
The thing that struck me is that with every Labor Day, one of the things that always happens is people are given a pay rise. Anyone who understands basic economics will tell you that doesn't help anything. Having more money doesn't help. What it does, it raises the inflation because the goods that were being supplied, same goods, all right? Now, you have more money chasing it. The price just goes up. I am waiting and have waited for someone to come and tell us how it is they are going to forget these lovely, delightful theories we keep hearing of, how we are going to be self-sufficient in food production, how it is we're already supposedly self-sufficient in power production, but how all these costs that we have will keep going down. You know why? When the costs go down, the little money you have, it makes it easy for you to afford a living. I don't hear it.
Sounds like you're saying what the DP has been saying.
No, that's not what the DP is saying.
You see, for you to sustain food production, you need to have a conversation with the farmers. The farmers need to have their conversation.
And I'm saying we don't want a conversation,
and
Eric.
say what they need, and then they start doing what they need to do.
What the farmers need is not unknown. What you hear me expressing is my fatigue with discussions about things we've had discussions about and things we already know, simply being packaged and presented as though it's something different, yet it isn't. What is this bottoms-up approach? Is that not what the devolved units were supposed to be? Okay, what are these systems that are going to be put in place to strengthen the so-called devolved systems? What is it that's going to be mandatory so that what we're talking about actually takes place? Because the argument here in the discussion is not new systems, new ideas, new discussions. It's simply implementation. We haven't implemented the things that we were talking about, projects that we talked about with the exception of infrastructure. So suddenly, new discussion about the old discussion that was not implemented.
I'm just asking why this brilliant idea has not been implemented up until now.
Perhaps the problem with the lack of implementation, as you call it, is the fact that those at the top have not had this paradigm shift.
But he's at the top.
This
person who's making this suggestion is right there at the top.
Yes, he's a deputy of somebody who's at toper than top. The paradigm shift has not happened in the thinking of those who are in charge of policy. They still think that, yes, we shall devolve, but then we shall tell the people at the devolved units what they need to do, instead of listening to what the people at the devolved units want to see done and facilitating them to get it done. Okay? If that paradigm shift has not happened in the mindsets of the people, then we need to have a paradigm shift. And this bottoms-up approach, by the way, is not just a Kenyan conversation. Well, it's not even Ruto's grandiose idea. It's actually a global movement on a paradigm shift in economic thinking. What is it that needs to happen? It's people that need to drive their own agenda. And the government just takes a backseat and facilitates this agenda. So if you are cotton farmers, for example, and you're thinking, all right, so this is what we need. We need to think this, and the other so that we can get facilitated. The government sits back and listens. Not the government comes up with solutions that, okay, you people, this is what you need. No. It's a bottoms-up approach.
Forgive me, Eric, but I have difficulty discussing a discussion that is being made to sound like it's a new discussion, yet it's the same discussion we've had since independence. It's just that with every presidency, it's repackaged to look different. And even with this government, it was packaged to look different. Now, suddenly, somebody who not was is part of the government. And for the first 5 years, it's not as though the presidency started in 2017, started in 2013. What is it about the implementation of all these lovely projects that we had? Where has it taken us? Let's talk about the audit. Has our agriculture increased?
In terms of output?
Yes. Have we gotten to a point where we can say in this sector we are self-sufficient? Have we looked at the foreign exchange earning enterprises within the agricultural sector, and we can say the things that have been done to ensure that we enhance them? What are the new plans we have for enhancing them? This is a tiresome political discussion that is not any different from political discussions that politicians have whenever there's an election cycle around the corner. We will improve this. We will do this. We will do this. It's just that
we will change our thinking.
Yes, we will change our thinking. We will change our wording. We will change the thing that never changes is the deeds. All that talk is what is given, but at the end of the day, we are exactly where we were in terms of people saying the same things in different words. But in terms of achievement of goals, we are actually not forward. We're not even static. We actually lose momentum.
Okay, but if you forget the messenger, like I always keep saying.
It's not the messenger. It's the message I'm talking about.
Think about the message and compare the economics of the last 8 years, what we call now the Uhurunomics, right? That focused a lot on infrastructure, big infrastructure projects. And the thinking behind it, even if you look at the budget policy statement for this year, is you invest in these big infrastructure projects that spurs economic activity at the lower levels. Invest in roads that spurs economic activity and opens up in areas of economic activity. Invest in dams, and that opens up areas of economic activity. Railway, roads, electricity expansion, big infrastructure. And where we are, and people keep questioning and wondering, so the amount of money that has been invested by the Jubilee administration in the last 8 years on big infrastructure projects, are we reaping the benefits of that? And the questions have been asked. And almost the jury is still out, but so far the indicators are like, it'll take us a long time before we start reaping the benefits of this. Now, shift that conversation a little bit and say, how about if instead of investing in a big 300 billion shilling project, you put that 300 billion shillings directly into agriculture, where it goes directly into farmers. Farmers get better input, lower the cost of production, and then that comes up. How about changing that and saying, instead of investing all this money on one giant ministry, call it transport, infrastructure, urban development, housing, call one giant ministry, call it agriculture. Another one, call it health. And another one, call it social protection. Invest in those three. Pump your money into those, in addition, of course, to education. Invest into those. And then see, in 8 years' time, whether the stadium has, no, not the stadium, in 8 years' time, are we going to have better production in our coffee sector, in our tea sector, in avocado. Avocado now, we are Africa's leading exporter of avocado. 8th in the world. Tens of billions of shillings being exported in avocado from this country.
Is that individual
monthly.
investment effort, or is it the government effort or push for it?
It's two things. It's individual investment, a lot of conversation by farmers, by governors at their local level. Now imagine if government had actually invested into it. Imagine if government has put up chilling factories. Yes, the government has gone to China and secured a market for Kenya's avocados in China. But the condition is that those avocados have to go there processed. Now imagine if a government had invested in an entire value chain with chilling factories, collection centers, bringing them all the way to JKIA and taking them out. Would be talking about more. Would be number 3 or 2 or 1 globally.
Yes,
See?
we
Bottoms
would.
up approach.
We would. We would. This isn't something that is not known to those who are in charge of our economic thinking.
They know
policy makers. This thing, they know it far better than even we do.
Absolutely.
And they even know details. And I'm sure in that dust gathering archive, among the many archives that we have in this country, there are proposals and there are policies that were written on such matters which, if implemented, would have brought about the very same thing that you're saying. So, again, let me go back to what I was saying. We are not talking about something new. What we are doing is politicizing a campaign and making the campaign an economic issue. Okay? And rightfully so, because in all honesty, campaigns are about economic issues. You cannot campaign and not talk about how you plan to make the lives of your people better. However, if you're talking about infrastructure, the economic thinking behind infrastructure is sound. Infrastructure is supposed to do everything that people say it should do. The problem is never infrastructure. The problem is the cost overruns that involves our infrastructure. So the push for infrastructure doesn't point towards just a government that is seeking to ensure that the infrastructure development in the country is improved. But it also strikes you of people who are involved in those processes who see this as an avenue for amassing wealth.
And if you look at it, if you look at that infrastructure in terms of what it is supposed to do, because I think, unfortunately, what normally happens is that we get involved in these big projects without looking at how it's supposed to help these very same people that we keep talking about. To say that the majority of the population are the ones who bear the responsibility for spurring on the economy by their individual or collective community economic effort. You know what? Infrastructure, what does it do? If you want to look at the very basic, you have people connecting. So many things then are opened up. Trade, access to markets, so that people are able to get from one place of activity to the next, making the flow of things a lot smoother. That's what we look at. But unfortunately, and I can see what CT is saying, is that what happens is that you get involved in these big projects and they are overrun by cost. So then you take away the focus that people would actually see this is a project that could actually help the people. And so this bottom up approach is completely forgotten about because, again, it's usurped by a very few, overrun the cost. That extra money is put into a few pockets, and then people are wondering, all right, we still have to pay a lot more to survive within this economy whereby this infrastructure is said to have helped us, and it doesn't. So this bottoms-up approach, I'm sorry, is not a new phenomenon. It's not a eureka moment. It's what countries have been doing for the hundreds of years. Unfortunately, it's a political moment that is being, it's a moment that is being now taken politically. It is the way in which any upcoming economy actually needs to survive. Look at the Industrial Revolution that took place in Europe. What was it? It was not government deciding what they were going to do. It was putting the power in the hands of small manufacturers. And that's how they were able to spur on an economy. That is what is supposed to happen when you're trying to grow an economy. But right now, we're making it seem as if somebody's had a eureka moment and made it seem as if this is the way to go.
Well,
the fact
of the matter is, Ndu, philosophically speaking and all, the fact of the matter is this is a conversation that is gaining momentum globally. Which means that there's something wrong with what has been happening in the last couple of years globally in terms of how the economies of the world are being run. When President Joe Biden talks about the bottoms up, he is basically saying there's something that has been happening that is not the right thing. Our capitalism is benefiting those who are rich. They get richer. And those who are poor are getting poorer. we need to focus on how we can empower the poor to actually get more comfortable in their life. That is a whole global conversation about the bottoms up. It is looking at, like what he said, during this COVID-19 period, the billionaires have increased their wealth X-fold. Those who are poor have lost their wealth X-fold. That is wrong. We need to have another conversation. Now, when DP Ruto comes and goes up ahead with his bottoms-up conversation, what we should be doing is asking ourselves, is this bottoms-up conversation the same bottoms-up conversation that's happening everywhere else in the world? Are you talking about the same thing when you say, let us go and empower the weak, the meek, those who are poor, let us have a conversation with them and empower them? Exactly how are you empowering them?
Is it?
Biden is a politician and he's also doing the same thing. I mean, look.
He's playing to the gallery.
Of course he is, for heaven's sake. We know what the Democrats supposedly stand for. We know the Republicans supposedly stand for. Republicans are known to stand for big business. Okay? Now he is in the other camp and he's saying, you know, folks, given the situation that we have, remember, COVID is around the world. So if there's a conversation around the world, which is similar, it makes sense because COVID is ravaging economies. And for the longest time, I don't think it had dawned on those in power or those who owns the means of production, own capital, that it would get to them. It has gotten to them. So you have to change the way you discuss the whole thing and say, look, folks, it appears that we got this model wrong. You didn't get the model wrong. No. There was nothing wrong with the model so long as it suited your purpose. So now it doesn't suit your purpose. So now we have to have a new model because which will now, yes, again, it's supposed to suit your purpose. The discussion about how to help people, there's no secret and there's nothing difficult. If the decision to help the common man is made and implemented, the common man will be helped. This nonsensical discussion about bottoms up and bottoms down and bottoms across and horizontal and vertical, that isn't going to change the lives of the people. It's really as simple as that.
If you wanted to help people, you would have helped them. If you wanted to make sure that the economy was running and that people who are at the, I'm sorry to use the word again, bottom, were going to have any kind of ability to then rise up. If you wanted to have done that, you would have done it. Could have done it. Could have implemented these things. It's just that now it sounds fancy and everybody's using these words because it looks great, but it could have actually been done years ago. And like I say, the conversation is being had around the globe, very nice. But there's some people who are not talking about it and actually doing it and have implemented it before.
Do you know something, This country has put in policies that we know of and structures that should have brought this discussion into being a long time ago. The moment you had a CDF, okay? The moment you had a similar fund for the women's rep, the moment you had counties, you already were implementing a bottoms-up approach. What do you think all those things were about? Forget this big brother national government, bring it down, qua ground, as Eric likes saying, all right? Okay? Problem is, it's not getting to the ground.
It's just being said and it's floating around in the clouds. This conversation is happening in the clouds.
Yes, because it has not been said. It hasn't been called bottoms up.
Oh, so now that it has been called bottoms up is when it will be done. I bet go, Joe. It's now that you've given it a name, that's when it will happen.
Yes.
Hoodwinked are you, my friend? Wool eyes covered.
So, okay.
So now, City, fear not. It has been given a name. It has been given a name now. This thing that you're supposed to have been doing, now we shall see. Things will be done.
Do you know, up ought to actually get to the bottom, okay? Then the bottom can say we are now together
Looking
with up,
up,
and we can now move up. Okay, so can up come to bottom
down,
so that bottom can actually feel that up is with them?
Look, the whole, and you're right, I think, in terms of saying, bring the money, bring the resources to the people. Give them CDF, give them women's, they're called equalization fund, whatever.
Yeah, we have it.
All those things. The next thing, what has been missing here, is the people themselves participating in the decision-making of how that money is utilized. People themselves participating in making the decisions of what needs to happen for me to get empowered, for my life to change. And we keep talking about it here all the time. Public participation. If we have a system that allows people to actually sit and decide, we have 1 million shillings. Remember what Mila Menga was telling us? 1 million shillings.
How are we going to share
our
it?
village. Let's discuss, what do we need to do? Start implementing that. That is bottoms up.
Believe me, it's a
clean.
good thing. And the money has been available, all right? It's just that up has remained up.
Yes.
Okay.
The money the up remains, and then it trickles down. And that's why they are saying the trickle down approach has not worked. Bottoms up approach is the new fad globally. This thing of what you telling us that you've given the MP to bring to us. No, give me directly. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
All right, so still continues to pile up on Mombasa Road and slow out into the city, but it's nothing too crazy this morning, so that's good. Remember, schools do open next week, so we're likely to see heightened levels of traffic probably from the beginning of next week. Coming off of Jogo Road today is where there's that mess. Very, very slow, trying to get into the city centre. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Thika Road is messy from Survey. Matatus opting to branch through Mathari Road and then out that way. So we also see some traffic coming out of Westlands, just a little bit as you get into the city centre from the University Way roundabout. Apart from that, nothing too crazy. We'll keep an eye on things and see how they develop this morning. We're officially in the middle of traffic hour. Let's see how it treats us this Monday morning. Just in case you get stuck somewhere, let us know. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us. Text 40127. We hope this Monday doesn't get manic. We'll try to control it as much as we can. Share information here and there. Hope you don't get too stuck for too long.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
I was using the wrong mic. 2.5 minutes after 8, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Welcome. This is the third hour of the show. We're here until 10 a.m. We started at 6 a.m. And for the next 1 hour, we'll be live as well on KTN Home. A very good morning to you, audience on KTN Home. Welcome to your radio experience on TV. CT, today's proverb.
Happiness is not perfected until it is shared.
Happiness is not perfected until it is shared.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't asked you, where is this proverb from? Is it from most Africans or is it from a specific community in Africa?
Where is it? You know, every time you ask me where a proverb is from, let me make your life easier. When it's from a specific country, I will tell you it is from a specific country. When I simply read it and then keep mum, it means it's an African proverb. And usually, the African proverbs are proverbs that really, any segment of this African community and society will have something similar. So it's just the phrasing of it. And remember, we are reading a proverb that existed in some native language and has now been translated into English. So this is the closest approximation of what it means or what it's supposed to mean. And usually in the process of translation, you want to try and ensure that you retain the meaning. Now, retain the meaning, well, whether that is done, whether it isn't, but again, one could argue that this particular proverb is actually not even an African proverb, it's a universal proverb. Yes.
it's a global one.
Yes, it's a global proverb.
Okay. Let's continue with an economic conversation. We'll be talking about budget in this hour. We'll have with us James Muraguri, the Chief Executive Officer of Institute of Public Finance Kenya, IPF Kenya. Last Thursday, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Ambassador Ukur Yatani, presented before Parliament the medium-term budget and the Finance Bill 2021 for consideration. Now, MPs are supposed to look at this, prepare a report, and the Budget and Appropriations Committee will look at it and then present its report to the Parliament, and then they will discuss and see, okay, does it make sense? Should we approve? Should we then go ahead and start appropriating this money? 3.632 trillion shillings is the budget for the financial year 2021-2022. 3.632 trillion shillings. And the National Treasury says that this budget is proposing to strike a balance between stimulating economic recovery and responding to the health challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. In preparing, let me quote Ambassador Atani, in preparing the estimates, we have been very alive to the current challenges of the ongoing pandemic while ensuring that we continue on a steady path of economic recovery by investing 26.6 billion shillings on post-COVID-19 economic stimulus program and 135.5 billion shillings on the President's Big Four agenda covering universal healthcare, food and nutrition, manufacturing, and affordable housing. So universal, Big Four still continues to receive money. In the proposed budget, the Executive, Parliament, and the Judiciary have been allocated some money. I'm not going to read those amounts. And the Finance Bill, on its part, is seeking to amend the Income Tax, the VAT Act, the Excise Duty Act, the Tax Procedures Act, the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act, as well as the Capital Markets Act, the Central Depositories Act, the Kenya Revenue Authority Act, the Insurance Act, the Retirement Benefits Act, to facilitate realization of the budget proposals. All those acts. Amendment means we are tweaking here and there to say how much money we're going to collect from you using the authority of this particular piece of legislation. That's basically it, okay? 3.632. 6 divided by 2, 3 divided by, okay, minus 1, 2. 632 trillion is the budget for the next financial year. James Muraguri is with us on the line. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Latif.
Welcome to the Situation Room. Good to have you on the show again.
Thanks for having me.
Before we look at this 3.632 trillion shillings, just explain to us, just for purposes of understanding the previous conversation we were having. I'm sure you as an economist and a public finance management expert, this whole issue of a trickle-down versus bottoms-up economy, what is it? What does it mean?
From my understanding, when you think about bottom-up economics, essentially we are trying to look at how our economy was structured immediately post-independence. Now, we've had the famous, section of paper number 10, where the argument was that if people at the top got to fill their baskets, then their baskets will fall, will release the clubs and overflow and allow the rest of the people to eat the clubs. Now, the model, which is being adopted worldwide, including recently, we had Joe Biden mentioning the same, is the question about how about we ensure that people at the bottom got their fill and their productivity had an effect on those at the top. I think that's the conversation now we are seeing, because it's a question of inequality. Now, here we need to look at it from an inequality perspective. We've left so many people behind as we pursued, the gratification of a few who are in decision-making and, positions of power. And this is now the model that's being questioned. How do we reduce the inequality gap? And Kenya, to a greater extent, has been documented as one of those countries, with a huge inequality gap. And so this model definitely seeks to cure that gap.
Okay. Now, what model are we currently having with this 3.362 trillion shilling budget?
This budget, based on the document that's circulating, which is publicly not yet available as at now, because what we have circulating is a statement from the CS and the budget summary statement, and we expect Parliament to make that publicly available, and the Treasury to put it on their website, which they have not put in. It's again a trickle-down effect, not a bottom-up, budget from where I sit, because we are looking at putting money into contractors' pockets, paying, those who have given us money. Remember, the debt that we have as a country was not given by this ordinary citizen who's been left at the bottom of the pyramid, but it's given by the bankers, the capitalists, what to consider that perspective, which is not a wrong model, but definitely you've got to pay them their due.
Okay. I think the bigger question then is 3.362 trillion shillings, and this is going to be an increase from what's the current financial year's budget?
We are currently at 3.0.
Okay, so 600 billion shillings. How do we explain that? How does the National Treasury explain increasing the spending for the next financial year by 600 billion shillings?
In terms of pandemic, this does not make sense. In fact, we expected this budget. We should have been modest enough to bring it down and accept that we need to live within our means. So, first of all, let's agree that we have a treasury that has, that seems to be listening to no one, including Parliament, because Parliament approved in the budget policy statement in March an overall budget of 3 trillion. Now they have they've received estimates of 3.6 trillion. There's no, there is no logic in that, and we're looking forward to burdening citizens much more and more. And this at the point where you get to alive and say things are bad, I need to tighten my belt. But as we head to an election year, we've got to be alive. As we head to an election year, there are a lot of freezing that needs to be done to the votes, and you know how gullible the Kenyan voter is. So the truth of the matter is that this budget, from where I see it, it does not make sense, and we're expecting much. We need more explanation. But our eyes now are on Parliament. That can only be our savior.
James, is it really true that the Kenyan voter is gullible?
Yeah, because once handouts in form of their taxes are given to them, they move that direction, because their money will be used on them.
Is that a sign of gullibility, or is that a sign of hopelessness and helplessness?
I would think the equation lands across. When you are hopeless, you are very gullible.
I see where you're going with this. So somebody who is in a state of hopelessness is more likely to be gullible. And I'm saying, no, they're actually not gullible. You see, if someone is, as I say, hopeless or in a helpless situation, then what we see is survival mode. It's not gullibility. You ask me, if you live in a country like ours and you have lived long enough to see how our politicians go about their business of politicking and managing our affairs, what conclusion would you come to? Ndu says this all the time. We are on our own here, okay? So every once in a while, when these people appear, then get what you can for that moment, because you're not going to get anything else after that.
It's your moment to harvest.
Yes. They arrive, get it, and then just continue with your life, because this expectation that something better is going to come, it's like they've long understood that thing isn't coming. So that is the thinking. That is where I'm coming from. So I wouldn't say they're gullible. I wouldn't say they're gullible at all, because if they were actually genuinely gullible, then you would find that people who are elected or in electoral positions stay there for maybe even 20 years. They don't. We renew them and we revise them and we replace them effectively every single year.
So, City, if not gullible, then what are they? What is a citizen? Compliant?
No.
Or what?
No.
Because look, it's a time of the pandemic, okay?
Yes.
The National Treasury first starts by telling us that in the next, we need to tighten our belts, during this time you're going to take to Parliament a budget policy statement saying we are going to spend 3 trillion shillings. Barely 2 months later, you actually take another statement to Parliament that says you're going to spend 3.6 trillion shillings. Parliament is likely, because of the way that we've seen Parliament, it's likely to pass that budget. And you as a citizen are likely to see the effect of those laws being adjusted here and there so that you're taxed more in various other areas so that you can raise the money. And you will comply. So that's what I'm asking. If not gullible, then what?
But do you have a choice to comply in this case? Do you have a choice right now, just as you've said? Like Morigori is saying now, this document is being passed about. It would look as though this is the plan that the government is going to take for the budget, right? In terms of things like public participation and do we think this is going to work? There's very little that the citizen is going to be able to do to change the course of this.
Well, citizens can actually participate. During that phase of public participation, you can raise the questions, you can ask the questions hard enough.
Okay,
and then make the government start answering those questions or maybe even backtrack. But since that is not going to happen, and that's what I think James is saying, that they know that not much you're going to do. In fact, they'll come. It will be packaged in such a way that you'll see. You see, now we're increasing the amount of money that's going to be allocated to the counties. You see what's going to happen. We're going to run an election in an election year. You see what we need to do. We need to put in a lot of money for economic recovery post-COVID. You see, blah blah blah.
But I don't think gullibility. Okay. I don't think gullibility comes into play here. I think what happens is that where the citizens participate in this entire process is by then making their contribution to pay for this really heavy budget that is going to come in. That's why you're going to participate. You are going to participate in the payment of these heavy debts and these heavy loans, or am I wrong? The citizen in this case, who should actually be benefiting from how the country is going to spend its money, essentially how they will participate is making sure that they make their contribution to make sure that all this is paid for. Am I wrong?
James.
Are you there, James?
Yes, I am. You see, let's look at it and see how the Kenyan citizen, the Kenyan taxpayer, to say so, has been used and abused, by the process. First of all, it's a question of, tokenistic participation, where you're invited to participate so that boxes can be ticked.
Exactly.
We invited James. James came on behalf of the private sector and on behalf of the civil society, and he presented his views. We noted his views and we appreciate and we move on. That's it.
So you're actually not really involved in any decision making. It's really about ticking a box. So even when we hear touting about public participation, it's for you to come and say that so they can say yes, or we brought this to the members of the public. They were involved because we asked them what they thought. They asked questions. We documented them in a book, or we have that record, but we're going to move on with what we intended to do in the first place. Is that the scenario that we are being dealt?
Absolutely, because one of the things we need to observe here is that we've completely just taken public participation, literally. That's participate, It's passive. Like we invited you to, you came, you get a certificate of participation. That's it. There's no merit in your participation. You see, but the conversation, and I think the spirit of the Constitution was in such a way that we will have a participation from a deliberative perspective, where I'll come and present my argument. And then when we are concluding, for example, the budget, we will provide reasons and justifications on why we did not take the propositions that James made, the proposition that stakeholders made, and the reason was A, B, C, D. But we will notice that, for example, the budget policy statement will present that, stakeholders came, they argued, for example, they wanted increased financing for immunization. And then the response by Treasury would be that we noted this and the Ministry of Health will take into consideration the views. That's it. And remember, to a greater extent, even when we see our budget looking at 3.6 trillion, there is also a lot of heavy donor financing. So it's still, not as financing. Because to be very honest, look at it from this perspective. We corrected the financial year 2019-2020. We corrected taxes worth around 1.5 trillion.
Yep.
This year, to a max, we are likely to correct 1.6 and not even 1.7. And 1.6 is a stretch. Even look, the hitting 2021, 2022, hitting 1.5 will be a miracle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
because
James,
first of all,
go ahead.
We are moving from an economy where we are saying our economy in 2020 grew by 0.6%.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have numbers, Treasury saying that our economy will grow by 6%. You have Africa Development Bank saying we'll grow by 5%. IMF saying we'll grow by 7%. But ideally, we've seen when an economy has contracted that much, you cannot just move 5 percentage points of GDP in growth. It's impossible. And the last time this happened, our growth was that level was in 2002 when we were getting the NAC government.
Okay.
So this is not practical. So you can imagine we are collecting 1.5 trillion of taxes, and then we are projecting spending 3.6 trillion in terms of expenditure. What are we smoking?
Okay, well, that's a good question. But then to ask, let's play pretend for a minute. I remember when I was a little girl, I would like to take myself to a fantasy land, play around. Let's take ourselves to that place right now and say, all right, budget, 3.6 trillion shillings. What would need to happen for us to realize as a country a budget like that and operate within those lines? If there were 5 things that absolutely needed to happen for this to be, because right now where you are at, you're saying if it's collection of taxes, we'll be lucky if we scrape by the skin of our teeth at 1.6 trillion this year, right? So what else would need to happen for this 3.6 trillion to be realized, taking into consideration that GDP is everything that you're going to produce over the next 1 year? What needs to happen to say, okay, fine, we would be comfortable with this?
So first of all, for this year, to be very honest, we need to put aside in commencement of any new projects. We know it's an election year. We are going to an election year because this just pushes money and spreads the money thin. So we need to think that, I know we need to commence and launch new projects, but we need first of all to conclude the ongoing development projects. So any intended new project needs to be paused, right? Because first of all, as a country, we do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. The amount of money we correct, 1.7 trillion, if what's what we try to correct. If we were to be very honest with ourselves as a country, and including the normal, we'll have probably some bit of borrowing to keep the financial markets going because it's a critical part of the economy. We would have a simpler budget of not more than 2.5 trillion, for example. And that would mean also that would continue with the ongoing projects that are being constructed so that if it's suppliers and contractors who've been given work are paid, and because in their payments there are taxable elements, then that tax comes back into the economy. Because first of all, you have to acknowledge that government is the largest consumer in the economy. And we cannot rule out. So we want to see businesses being paid their money. Because remember, when my small side hustle is not paid by a county government or a national government, it has a ripple effect on the mama boga that I buy my groceries from. Because then probably I'll take a credit there, and she has to go to the farm to take credit, hoping that James will come and pay, and then I'll pay. That's sequence. So we have to accept from that perspective. It is possible. And last week, the institute and partners, we called for freezing of new projects in this financial year. So those are some of the things. Then the other thing we need to think about for us to achieve that, it's tax expenditures. We are giving too much relief to multinationals and other people on the name that we are trying to attract foreign direct investment. So you can imagine, KRA in the last two years mentioned that every year we lose to an extent of around 470 billion on tax expenditure alone. And this will include, for example, the reliefs we give on capital allowances for EPZ and special economic zones. We say, come and manufacture from Kenya. We will not tax you any withholding tax. We will not tax you any corporate tax for 10 years. And then you sell outside. Yes, you sell out of Kenya. But we know, yes, they sell out of Kenya. But it is well documented that tax is the least of concern for a business when the regulatory environment is light. So if we were to let go of tax expenditures, we would approximately save between 400 and 450 billion every year. That would accrue back to the economy because people will have to pay their fair share of tax.
Right. Let's take a break at this particular point. I mean, that's a very strong one. The Institute of Public Finance is basically calling for a freeze on new projects in the government in the next financial year. This and more is what we are discussing with James Muraguri, the CEO of Institute of Public Finance Kenya, on the next year's financial budget. 3.632 trillion shillings is how much the government intends to spend in the next financial year. How are they going to raise that kind of money if this year we are likely only to raise 1.6 trillion? So what? In the next financial year, how are we going to be able to finance that budget? This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Time for a break at 24 minutes after 8. We'll be back shortly after taking a look at the weather and traffic. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
It's time to answer questions that are worthwhile. The Big Quiz Show is here. Register to play from the comfort of your home by SMSing the word JOIN to 23774. Then watch the live show on KTN every Sunday from 8 p.m. where you could have a chance to win a melee. The fastest and most accurate answers are guaranteed to win. The Big Quiz Show, Sundays at 8 p.m. only on KTN. For many of us, home is a place where we find our inner peace. A place where we find the most comfort. A place where we recharge. A place where we create laughter and all the good memories. But most importantly, a place where we all belong. At KTN Home, we believe there is something for everyone. So catch all the comedy, telenovelas, Nollywood, music, sporting action, kids shows, documentaries, movies, dramas, and reality shows, all to make you and your family feel right at home. You can also stream live at www.standardmedia.co.ke/KTN Home/live on your favorite device. KTN, welcome home.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room,
All right, so
the only way to start.
In Nairobi today, there's a high chance of rain, going to highs of 23 today. It'll come down to lows of 16. Light rain in Nyeri at 17, highs of 23 and lows of 15. Mostly sunny conditions in Nakuru at 18 degrees, highs of 25. We'll see highs of 24 in Eldoret at 16 degrees. Right now, it's mostly cloudy. Mostly sunny conditions in Kisumu at 22, highs of 27. Highs of 26 we recorded in Kakamega today. It's raining at the moment at 20. 27 and rainy in Mombasa. It'll go just to a high of 28, down to lows of 25. 25 will also be the low recorded in Malindi, where it's raining at 28. Rain showers continue in Kampala at 21, going to highs of 25. It'll come down to lows of 17. It's also raining in Dar es Salaam, still at 25, highs of 29 and lows of 24. Sunny conditions in Johannesburg at 10, highs of 19 and lows of 7. And rain showers in Lagos at 27, highs of 31 and lows of 26. It's mostly sunny in Kinshasa at 24. It'll go to highs of 30 today, down to lows of 23.
Chilled Spice.
Okay, if you lost your car, it's on the Naivasha-Nairobi highway. The keys are still in the car and the doors are open and nobody knows what's happened to the owner of this vehicle. So if you can't find your vehicle and you left it somewhere in Naivasha, it is still there on the highway and folks are wondering how it got there, but If it's you, raise your hand. So on Thika Road, coming into the city, it's still a bit slow, especially right around the Pangani underpass. Take a minute to get out of that one, but then you get to Wangari Maathai Road and you should be fine getting into the city. Jogo Road, all the way from Hamza, still moving very, very slowly this morning as you get then towards Landy's industrial area, also packed, especially Lunga Likoni. The Likoni interchange then feeds onto Mombasa Road as you try to get to the southern bypass. A little bit of traffic there, but it should be all right. Heading into the city using the southern bypass, the eastern bypass, moving along beautifully this morning. Outer Ring also giving some good vibes getting into the city much quicker than sitting on Mombasa Road. Okay, let's talk. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. If you need some help getting out of a stuck situation, or if you can offer up some, it'll be great. Text us as well. 40127.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings
exactly half past
done right.
8. Kenya's biggest conversation
94.4
in the
Spice
Situation Room each and every weekday morning. You have CT Muga, Ndu Oko, Eric Latif. This hour we are discussing Kenya's financial status. The next year's financial budget is going to be 3.632 trillion shillings, and this is according to what the National Treasury has presented before Parliament. This is now to be discussed by members of Parliament. Then the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury will come and say, how does he intend to raise the money? When he does come to talk about how he's going to talk about raising the money, we were talking about the capacity of the economy to generate as much as possible of this 3.632 trillion shillings. And we're having a conversation with James Muragori, the Chief Executive of Institute of Public Finance, Kenya. 1.5 trillion is what was collected last year. This year we are heading towards 1.6, probably 1.7. Despite the COVID pandemic, James, so is it not possible that maybe in the next financial year we could also even hit 1.92 trillion shillings? Still, how does the government finance the rest of the money?
In this time of pandemic, we've got to be very honest ourselves because, I mean, globally, the pandemic has hit everyone. Now, for us to hit the levels of revenue correction we are looking at, this budget probably should provided insights on how we are going to open up the economy. And to open up the economy is not necessarily looking at, we've lifted the curfew or the lockdown. That's a minor piece of it. Now, opening up the economy looks like mass vaccination, wide mass testing. Now, really, the budget does not have that provision, that wide resources. Then everyone opens up their business at 50% of capacity. Employers are affected. They have to let people go. Then from when sources of tax are we talking about? Then we are likely to continue burdening the already existing taxpayer. And because that's, I think for KRA, that's the low-lying fruit. You are already paying tax, so we know you have money, so we can top up a little bit of more for you. And of course, also the element, which is very unfortunate, where, we catch you by surprise. We come, we expect, of course, one of the statements, the CS statement, was that we are going to propose tax reforms, tax reviews, in the coming financial year.
Yeah.
That's trying, and right now we are not talking about what is this. It's catching businesses by surprises. Remember, now I have to reorient myself as a business and start working. And that's the biggest undoing because we don't have a national tax policy in Kenya. And when we think about a national tax policy, then we are talking about an acceptable framework, that does not allow for catching people by surprise. You come, the CS will come in June and say, digital tax will start from 1st of January 2021. So all the businesses that are on digital tax, you're trying to reorient yourself. All our plans for the next financial year, because we are really plans.
Yeah.
We've got to factor in an extra 1.5% tax. However, we should have had a conversation for more than a year, so that when you're planning taking into consideration that as I continue increasing operations, then I'm providing for that tax. But, all where we have, the cases for beer and cigarettes, says we have increased the taxes for beer. And then all of a sudden, midnight, everyone started, looking for, beer has gone up. That's not proper for a regulatory environment. And I know all of us want to pay our fair share of taxes, but we want to pay that fair share of taxes in a predictable manner and for it to be used in the right way.
James, let me ask this question as a layman. Huh?
Yes.
What would happen if the government simply budgeted to use what we collect?
This is the problem. It's possible. It can happen.
Good. Now, take me to this geographical location where, when it happens, and tell me about the details of the things that will have to be accepted, changed. How would this happen?
That correcting taxes as they are and spending is an ideal situation. But because government correction of taxes and delivering services is a social contract between it and the state and the citizens, then globally that situation does not align. That's why the government will always lamp up, because there's an opportunity for increase. The economy is growing. So they're always pushing, a little bit. You started borrowing 100 billion, now we are borrowing $1 trillion. We are pushing. And what ultimately happen is it's a more concern of what happens when you have too much money. It's misuse because you are overwhelmed.
Yep.
You did not plan. It's going to the market. For example, we went for you go to buy to borrow Eurobond 200 billion. Then you find there was too much money. You take extra 70 billion, and then what happens? No one knows where exactly the money went.
You splash it.
You see? So that's the seal, CT, if you come to look at it. But ideally, we will not have a situation. An ideal situation is to spend what you correct. It's, it's saying that as an employee, you'll wait for your net salary and not go to a Shylock. And you not borrow your friends. But then at some point you find, I planned that all my money as I should have lived. I provided for everything. But in the middle of the night, I feel like probably... I probably need to buy that plot.
Looking at a country, looking at it from the scale of a country, it doesn't seem like a very healthy practice to me. I remember in the last financial year, I believe there was money given by international finance partners, and that money was to complete the current fiscal year's budget. That was what it was for. So even to finish the budget before you even go to a new one, we're having to borrow money for that. It's clearly not a healthy practice. What would it take to get out of this cycle? Because as we're looking at it now, it seems plain as day that it is not going to work. There's some things that you've even called impossible at this point. It is not possible to sustain a budget that high. What would work from what you see?
Let's first of all look at it from this perspective. Borrowing, and as per our laws in Kenya, we can only borrow for development expenditure, not for recurrent and operations. And that's within the limit of the 30% development expenditure. And all the time, every year, the government under the fiscal objectives, provides that statement that we have met this limit, including this year. They are saying we are at 32% of the 3.6 trillion. We are at 600 billion allocation for development. But we have got no money. We are borrowing that money. Right? Now we have expanded our remit to around 952 billion, of which 661 billion will be borrowed domestically. You see? So first of all, for us, we need to realize that borrowing domestically clouds out the private sector. And then means that then my business cannot get funding from the local commercial bank. Because I'm competing with government, but government is more secure than myself. Government lives in perpetuity. They will pay. But if you notice, the year 2005, 2006, during the Kibaki government, we borrowed zero from the domestic market. And this essentially meant that there was much more money. And that's at the point at which even banks were hawking loans in the streets.
Yep.
that means the economy then becomes more liquid. And I think that's where we need to adopt. We can borrow externally, because we also need to keep the financial markets running, and we know our local banks definitely and their systems have links externally. So they end up still lending to us from an external perspective, but also asking ourselves, what can we do to ensure that liquidity for the private sector increases?
So how do you strike that balance? Like just borrowing from that example of 2004, 2005, when the government did not borrow in the local markets, was that to the benefit? Did that actually benefit the economy, looking from the financial sector and the rest of the economy, the private sector?
Absolutely, it does, because it triggers the bank now to lend for commercial purposes to the businesses. Because first of all, the business of government is not to be in business, to be borrowing money to business, which is the problem we have. Because you also take into consideration that the government, to keep money, you borrow money in terms of development and you pump it to our parastatals, which we have like 250 parastatals, of which in the financial year 2019-2020, 127 of them made losses. So you borrow and you pump into systems that, throwing good money into bad money. So if you don't borrow locally, then it means that manufacturing companies, like the innovators who are developing ventilators, for example, they can walk into a bank and get a loan without competing with the government. Is taking a loan, a board at 12%. At that particular point, we were getting loans at 8%, 7-6%. So because banks then find themselves with a lot of money, and we've seen central bank trying to lower like the interbank rate, central bank rate, to ensure there is much more liquidity within the banking sector, so that they can offload much more. But also the process of getting those loans becomes extremely very difficult for small businesses, even micro and small medium enterprises, which are the bulk of our backbone in this economy. So we have to ask ourselves, we can't just survive on loans as an economy.
Okay, so
the loan is a critical component, but we just cannot just survive on that and financing our recurrent. Because what happens is that budget support, budget support is not necessarily supposed to to come and support salaries and operations and wages. It's supposed to be because we want to. There must be a return on investment, and the return on investment for government should not be on the purposes that there will be more money coming into the economy. It should be a question of, is the quality of life improving for citizens? When we do this load, what is it supposed to benefit? And because some of these projects, they are politically driven, unfortunately, just for the purposes of appeasing if it's voters, specific constituencies and regions. But then we miss the critical point of that. It's supposed to be improved quality of life for Kenyan citizens.
So, I mean, here we are looking at this, and it is very clear. All indications point to as you said, the impossibility of being able to sustain a budget thus. However, it looks like it's going ahead. Now, if we can see that it looks a little bit difficult to be able to color and stay within these lines, then those who are the policymakers and the budget makers and those who are drawing these lines must be able to see this show.
We are wondering what exactly that they know that we don't know, because clearly we can see the economy, the way things look like in the economy. It's obvious to everyone that we are in a pandemic here. Really, it's not that COVID has gone anywhere. In fact, most people have lost their jobs. And I take you back, for example, I notice the way, for example, the tax burden has increased. When we did the tax amendments last year to give people COVID relief packages under the tax amendment, we survived with it until December. Then December we did amendments. But what people did not realize is that it became even more expensive for you to earn a salary in Kenya. Because initially, your 47,000 shillings would be taxed at 30%. But now, your 32,000 is what is taxed at 30%. So meaning your disposable income is, it's less.
Yep.
And that, I wonder whether that's what the basis that we they are using to say that it will bring more money, or potentially when you think about tax reforms, within East Africa, our tax regime is still low at, VAT at 16%, and East Africa countries are at 18%. We should not be, in fact, we should not head in that direction. because effectively, if you think about if you earn 50,000, then your probably effective tax right now would be 30% plus 16%, around 46%, because most of the things you buy are taxable.
Yeah.
So out of your 100 shillings, you find you're spending 46 shillings in taxes. You know, and that's a burdensome. We need to find ways of earning within the economy without burdening. And this would be, instead of going deeper within the tax system, we need to go wider.
James?
Because going deeper, yes.
Okay, sorry, but just finish that thought. Going deeper.
Yeah, going deeper means that you're just targeting the people who already are in the tax bracket, and what you do is you push them to the black market in terms of avoidance of taxes. People start getting clever.
Yeah.
And getting clever is denying government revenue to deliver those critical services. Yeah. And also, for example, you've seen the mention of UHC, their Big Four agenda. We are allocating 131 billion, for example.
Yeah.
It's been 3 years of tax. The research by IPF, by the Institute over the last 1 year or so, we found that the Big Four agenda, is not achievable. It's not a Nairobi agenda. We look at across counties and we found it's around 30% implemented so far, with 1 year to the end of this term of this government. So we need to ask ourselves, what is this that is not happening when we keep putting
money into
money into bad money?
That was actually the question I wanted to raise, because 135.3 billion shillings is earmarked to go to the Big Four agenda. And if you look at it then cumulatively since 2017 and how much money has gone into the Big Four agenda, we are talking about over 300 billion shillings that's gone into the Big Four agenda. Is there value for money for this particular agenda? And the four projects that we are looking at: universal health coverage, food and nutrition, manufacturing and affordable housing. Can you look back and say the 300 or so billion shillings that has been spent by the government on these particular projects has actually had an impact?
That is probably we might want to ask, impact for who?
For the intended beneficiary, public.
Exactly, because there could be, impact for contractors, impact for the owners of capital, and impact for citizens.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at impact for citizens so far, we only saw the UHC pilot run in the 4 counties and then discontinued. And the learning of that UHC, for example, was to a greater extent financed by World Bank and other donors.
Mm-hmm.
Even today, the most disappointing thing is we continue relying heavily on donors to finance our healthcare system, of all other things.
Yep.
This is where we need to ask what is wrong with our system. And we need to continue. Citizens need to continuously question, because we should be putting all the money that we have, possible money, into the UHC so that we can improve the quality of life. And I keep emphasizing on the quality of life, because the social contract between the state and the citizens is on delivery of that contract, as long as taxes are being paid. So there is, value for money. For now, the Big Four agenda would have been integrated properly as a long-term engagement with Vision 2030. And we know it's a part of the medium-term plan, but it should not have been seen to be tied to a regime, to the Jubilee government, period of 5 years. It should have, and the unfortunate thing is that involvement of counties and county governments there is no clarity. So we say that you want counties, to learn the UHC, but you're not providing the resources for universal health coverage.
Yeah.
So counties are struggling with their equitable share component of that. So this money, then you end up talking about Big Four agenda. It's a question of, brick and mortar. As long as we build a building, we build houses, we are saying Big Four agenda is being achieved. Yeah. What is our manufacturing? What are we doing with our manufacturing? And our small cottage industries, for example. Because that's where we need to question, because most of the people would want to push and ask, for example, the Kenya industrial estates, for example, who manage that, those estates where you can have cottage industries on behalf of government.
Yeah.
What are they doing to promote manufacturing at the county level? Because manufacturing should not be at the city's level. It should be at the county's level, so that we can also, promote, urban rural migration, to those segments, and make it cheaper for business. Because the index for doing business in Kenya, we might say that progressively it's becoming cheaper to do business in Kenya, and we are ranking in the rank of business. But rank of business for who? For foreigners or for Kenyans?
But James, let me ask you this question. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and it makes perfect sense. But surely those who are in a ministry of finance, this is your field, the treasury, you know people there, they understand everything that you understand, if I'm not wrong, don't they?
They do.
Yes. Now, this discussion we're having is similar to many discussions we had last year at around such a time when we were approaching this particular period of determining how it is our country should run. Okay? Now, it appears that the very, very objective that the government seems to be saying they want to achieve, they themselves are undermining. And let me explain why I'm saying it. If you borrow more than you actually have, and it's like your entire process of expenditure is actually being supported because what we are borrowing is more than what we are actually collecting. It's like what we have is a third, consists of a third of the whole budget. Now, the government's solution to this situation seems to be tax the living daylights out of your people. Okay? Now, if you tax the living daylights out of people, the thing that will certainly be crushed, and I use the word crushed carefully here, is what you're calling enterprise. So then, with every passing year, you do this sort of thing, the objective is actually killed even before it begins, because we
need to contribute to the economy, but why don't we have it well documented and a conversation being held on why people are moving from mainstream hotels, for example, to Airbnb, and why the Airbnb are becoming cheaper? Remember, we've tried, the conversation about trying to even tax, the Ubers and the rest when the market is jacked up by new innovations. You try and kill. The problem is trying to kill innovation, trying to kill small enterprises as CTS, saying you start thinking about an enterprise, and the conversation that comes into your head is, how much tax am I going to pay when I start this enterprise? Yeah. And that alone just gets you out of the conversation.
Finally, as we conclude this conversation, James, Parliament has a role to play here. What should citizens expect of the elected leaders in Parliament as far as this conversation goes? There's a budget that has been presented to them by the National Treasury. They're supposed to look at it. They're supposed to have a conversation around it. What should the citizens expect of their leaders?
So first of all, these estimates been tabled to Parliament, and they go straight to the committee, the Budget and Appropriations Committee, which is led by Honorable Kanini Kega.
Yeah.
And he was in trade as the chairman of trade, and he's seen how business has. So first of all, he needs to strongly engage the private sector as a key stakeholder, because those are the people who pay, they pay a bulk of taxes as private sector. He needs to have that conversation, because also it's a time where the private sector starts asking for accountability of taxes. The other question is that we expect of parliamentarians is that they cannot approve this budget with the deficit that it has. They, first of all, in the budget policy statement, they said that they are not going, they made it very clear in the budget policy statement report that they are not going to approve this budget if it comes with a deficit more than what they have approved. Now it has come. Let's see what they can do.
Let the rubber meet
because
the road.
It's very clear. Yes. Yeah. We are at that point, and then especially, it is Kanini Kega, Honorable Kanini Kega, who signed that statement. Let's see him do at least, for once, stop the government on its track and say this is not practical in this country.
Yep.
Yeah. And also, we should start seeing now the question about them, being very honest with us as citizens, as politicians. Freeze those new projects that are being introduced. And first of all, we need to notice that the deficit, where the deficit has been introduced, these guys are very intelligent. They've introduced it at what is called consolidated fat service. And consolidated fat services is where money is spent as soon as you collect taxes, like debt, like pension. So whatever they want to do with that, it's not very clear at this particular point, but it will come out as soon as the bulk estimates start coming out. So we'll see that exactly what that means. The other thing is, for example, we need to see a proper policy being driven by counties with regard, for example, with the property tax in Kenya. We know property tax in Kenya is not every person owns property in this economy. Very few own property in this economy. But we know there can also be a lot of resources within properties, because we need to update ourselves. Nairobi, for example, the property starts being paid in Nairobi. Nairobi can sustain its own resources by just focusing on enhancing and modernizing the valuation law so that the tax rates being paid for.
That's on KTN Homes. Switch over to SpiceFM, 94.4 Nairobi, 87.9 Mombasa. Kisumu is 102.5, 96.0 in Eldoret. In Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret. Nyeri, 90.9 and Malindi, 97.7.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive and, of course, SpiceFM KE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
I'm sure there's a similar saying in very many other tribes and other languages. Or that thing of there's a time for joking and there's a time for swallowing the bone. You got a piece of bone that's stuck somewhere. There's a time when it must go.
As James Muraguri put it, it's difficult. It's difficult because we are revisiting the same issue, discussing the same parameters that we discussed the previous year. We are looking at government budgeting doing the same thing it did the other year, right? Telling us how it is this deficit thinking planning of theirs is actually going to benefit us. And yet, what remains unresolved is not this process in the money that they're getting. That one we get. But the guarantee or the semblance of a guarantee that these monies will actually go to the places they're intended to and that it'll be at the cost that they were intended to. Because all this money, whether it is in the agricultural sector, in the education sector, in the health sector, unfortunately, they meet their demise, the money I'm talking about, in the same way. It's allocated and then you wait with bated breath.
It disappears into thin air.
That's what they tell us. It doesn't actually disappear into thin air. It disappears into an enterprise that seems to have been the backbone and also the bane of our country. The biggest enterprise is how you can come up with schemes to guarantee that government money ends up with you and in your coffers, as opposed to doing what it's supposed to do. When they really try is when they get involved in some enterprise that gives the impression that work is actually being done, but still the result is the same.
Let's take a look at the traffic. It's now 9 a.m. Good morning.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, coming from Thika Road this morning, it's actually not too terrible. Getting into the city centre, then via the Pangani underpass. Kiambu Road is moving very nicely all the way from Quickmart to Rock City. Looks pretty good. And then you join with Thika Superhighway. Not too bad. It's at the underpass that you get stuck just a little bit, and then out towards Ngara should be all right. If you get stuck, you can also use Wangari Maathai Road into the city. Okay? Outer Ring looking good as well this morning. Mombasa Road is where you have a little bit of an issue because of course we know the construction. The Southern Bypass will give you some good times though. Out into the city should be all right using that. All right, so not too terrible this Monday morning all around. We'll have a look in a short while and see how this may have changed. Are you stuck somewhere? Are we giving the wrong info? Is it crazy in your neck of the woods? Let us know. SpiceFM KE on Twitter or text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Thank you very much for tuning in to The Situation Room today. We are on to the final hour of the show this morning, and we begin this hour with the day's proverb.
Yes, we do. Happiness is not perfected until it is shared.
Mm-hmm. Happiness is not perfected until it is shared.
Yes.
I hear you want to break into song right after that. Okay.
No. I'm not sure the SDA choirs have come up with it. But I'm sure they have something about Furaha. It starts from Upendo. It starts from Upendo and it ends up with Furaha. So, Ndu, let us talk about hell in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, it looks like it is hell for quite a number of young Kenyan and even middle-aged to older Kenyan women who are going out to look for greener pastures or to look for a higher salary to do domestic work. This has been covered severally before. There have been those who've gone to the Middle East and have come back with horror stories. There have been families who've been on this side of the pond and have said, look, our loved one was working there and through unfortunate circumstances, it passed away. And even to get their remains sent back home has been an issue. Now, it looks very lucrative. It looks very juicy from this side for somebody who was earning maybe 7,000 shillings. And then you are given the promise of earning 25,000, 30, 35,000 shillings to do the same domestic work that you would do here in the country, right? Your airfare is paid for. You basically have everything that you need, and your money basically is paid on time without an issue. However, the story that has been of very many people is the untold suffering of living in that situation, that they have some bosses who treat them terribly, some as terrible as making them into sex slaves, some whereby they don't see the light of day, some whereby they work hours where they do not get enough rest, waking up at 6 o'clock, working straight till midnight and only having 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. So they talk about the fact that the existence is actually quite terrible and that they would not wish it on anybody. They wish to just come back home. The thing is, though, even with these stories, because like we said, it's not the first time that they've been told. Today, if you were to look around, you still have very many people who are fighting today to procure a passport so they can still go to the same Middle East to work these jobs.
Opportunity.
Yes.
Yep.
They just want this opportunity to get this job and go. Regardless of these stories that are being told, they go.
Yeah.
So, is there a way to protect them? Is there a way to make sure that even if they do go, they will be protected? Can the government get involved in this to make sure? Is there some kind of policy that can be put in place to make sure that even as human resources being exported from Kenya, the individuals who go there can be protected, and that there are certain laws? There needs to be a bilateral agreement between the governments of Kenya and Saudi Arabia to say that regardless of what the situation may be, these are the requirements within which these individuals will work in a domestic setup.
Minimum requirements.
Yep.
And these are agreed between the two governments, the government of Kenya and the government of Saudi Arabia, and the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And once it's agreed, then also there's a formal way in which this happens. There's a story in the Standard today on page 6 and page 7 of the Standard, and this is a series that will continue to be published even tomorrow. And if you watch KTN News tonight at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m., the story will also be featured. It talks about several women who have gone to Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries, and they have suffered in the hands of their so-called employers. And also it gives the chronology of a journey to Saudi Arabia. So this is how a typical journey to Saudi Arabia begins. An interested Kenyan meets with agents from an employment agency. They are asked to sign forms committing to be available for the job opportunities. They surrender documents, that's the national ID and a birth certificate. Medical tests are done to confirm that they are free from chronic ailments, including diabetes and high blood pressure. They are then taken to hotels in Nairobi or Mombasa for a 3-day training in housekeeping. Vehicles are provided to pick women from any part of the country, and no transport charges are levied. So far, smooth, right? Mm-hmm. Meet with an agent, you sign and say, I'm looking for a job and I'll be available if a job is forthcoming. You surrender your ID and your birth certificate so they can now help you to process your travel documents. You're taken into a hotel where you're trained. This is how you wash dishes. This is how you clean the carpet. This is what you do. And so far, you have not even paid the money to get you from home to this particular facility. 6, the women sign a 2-year contract. During the 3-day training period, the agent processes passports and visas. The potential worker doesn't pay for the cost of applying for any travel document. So far, surely.
Looks good.
It's so good. Passports and visas are prepared in about 3 days. By the 4th day, air tickets to the Gulf are ready. Less than 2 days after the receipt of passports, visas and tickets, the 2,800 kilometers journey to Saudi Arabia begins. You arrive in Riyadh. They are received by a Saudi Arabian agent. In other scenarios, they are received by the family that they'll be working for. At the airport. Smooth so far, isn't it? You have a 2-year contract. You have your travel documents. You have boarded a flight. You arrive on the other end. You find a waiting party, either the employer or agent on the other side. Then the women hand over their documents to the employer and they start to work. It starts going south. In extreme cases, if the working relationship sours, the Kenyan worker can be violently rejected and ejected from the home or handed over to another family, often under slave-like conditions. If the Saudi agent refuses to bring the Kenyan worker back home, they are left stranded or at the mercy of the Kenyan embassy. That is what happens. And this is the fact check that's been done by the team that's worked on this particular story. Smooth up to the point when you land in that foreign country. Mm-hmm. You hand over your travel documents, and now, in very many cases, the employer turns out to be an animal. And in such cases, when you land with the wrong employer, you now face serious issues. Important to note here that there are very many other Kenyans who actually talk about positive experiences that they have. Sure. If you actually go onto social media, you'll find that there are very many groups of Kenyans talking and giving their experience and sharing their experiences. There are some who are talking about the bad experiences they're going through. Others are basically talking about the good experience that they're having. Now, the thing is, those ones with a bad experience. And these agents, what is it? Who regulates and registers the agents? Government. Who provides transport documentation? Government. And by the time somebody is going to the immigration department and with documents that are not theirs and saying, I'm applying for a passport for such and such a person. This is their birth certificate and this is their ID, and they're not present, and then you even go in and this is the photo, it means that there's some working relationship between
that person is known, and it is known that they would be coming with the documentation for other people,
seeking employment opportunities for others.
Exactly.
In some cases, actually, these agents are registered and they're recognized by government. You arrive from the other end, you're registered and recognized by government. So by the time this agent who is registered and recognized by government does not facilitate your return home, what is the role of the government?
You know, if you look at the turmoil that very many countries have faced, one of the things that has been a discussion, even with the International Labour Organization, has been this subject of migrant workers. And according to statistics that were available from that same ILO, close to 60%, or should we say, in 2017, they said it was 59%. But with the turmoil that has been in the world, it has gone up, so it's in the 60 percentile. Now, these are people who either leave their homes because, one, they are pursuing better lives for themselves, meaning it's for economic reasons, or maybe the political turmoil has led to some sort of strife and they have to leave the country, but they're still migrant workers. And almost every part of the world right now, you will hear stories of people migrating from where they originally lived, brought up, were born in, and moving to another country so that they can actually, should you say, get a better livelihood for themselves. But then there is also the category of individuals who form that group of people we refer to as those who have been brain drained. Meaning, because of their qualifications, the abilities that they have, they are able to move to other countries. In fact, often they are enticed to move. Because they have skills that that particular country requires. But these tend to be, in many cases, in smaller numbers. Okay? Now, the reality of what we're discussing here isn't the brain drain. What we are discussing here is yet something else that requires, that maybe falls in the same category as those who would have been referred to as migrant workers. Their country isn't in turmoil, but the turmoil that they have are economic hardships that now forces them to look for or seek opportunities elsewhere. Yes. Because if the country was able to find or provide them with these basic necessities, they wouldn't. For instance, do you hear of Americans migrating, say, to the Latin American countries, say Mexico is next door, to look for jobs? They don't.
No.
It's the other way around. Meaning, for many of them, what they consider to be an upkeep that is based on a livelihood and earning can be found within their borders. Now, African countries, because of the turmoil that we've had, and because of the proximity that the Middle East provides, has been able to provide this category of economic migrant an opportunity. And because of the numbers, unfortunately, all these negative stories that we hear have also come about. But I need to say something here. For a long time, East Africa, Kenya more specifically, provided a lot of the numbers that constituted this sort of work. And then, with the development of the Middle East, because there was a time the Middle East was in boom time, migrants also came from countries like Bangladesh. And that equation shifted. Because from what one reads and understands, these were workers who are willing to work under those same conditions and probably even worse conditions.
And earn less.
So that equation changed. Now, it looks like the demand for those jobs, the moment it outstripped the possible supply, then it created then an opportunity for those who want to offer those jobs to offer it on whatever terms they saw fit, and usually at the great disadvantage of the people who are seeking those jobs.
Right, because you have a long line of people who are actually waiting and will lap it up really quickly. Somebody who doesn't agree to do it, there's somebody else who would come and do the job.
Easily.
So I think also what happens is that it gives then way for individuals to be treated in whatever manner, and if you don't like it, you go. Or it would appear as though you were desperate enough to remain in that position, in that job situation, and then people can treat you in whichever way they want. Now, the kind of regulation or policy making that I'm saying that needs to happen when you're looking at this is not just to be sure of who is leaving Kenya and going to Saudi Arabia or going to whichever other country, but to also have regulations in place so far as, you know how in the US when you have, or some other countries that sometimes operate within welfare and social securities agreements, is that, take for example, when you have custody of children, and then you say that one parent will have supervised visits kind of thing. And so regularly you have somebody from Child Protective Services who comes and checks and makes sure the situation of things, kind of, that's what I'm talking about. To say that everybody who is going to then hire somebody from another country should also realize that there will be regular checks to make sure, and maybe not even unannounced checks, to make sure that this individual who is working in your home, because you're not part of this program where you're taking workers from another country, will know that they're coming to make sure that certain things are in in order. Because right now, it's a free-for-all. Anybody can do whatever they want. So long as they've hired somebody, they're going to pay them what they want. They're going to treat them in whichever manner they want, because it would appear that people are desperate. But the way in which we're looking at it, people have come back in coffins. People have come back sick. People have come back unable to work ever again. People have been traumatized and scarred for life because they've been used as sexual slaves. All of this thing is happening with Kenya's people today. So unless you have a regulatory scheme in place, it is going to be more of these stories that you're seeing today. There will be many more, and there will be many more filled with more horror. That's what's going to happen. The conversation has been had that yes, okay, it needs to be regulated, but now it actually needs to be done. It actually needs to be done.
Action needs to be taken. And that's why we're having this conversation today. And we want you to participate in the conversation, 0719-012-600. What is it that the government should do? What should the government do to protect Kenyans who are seeking employment opportunities and basically opportunities to earn a livelihood outside this country, not just in Saudi Arabia, but everywhere else? What should the government do? 17 minutes after 9, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Let's take a break, take a look at the weather forecast for the day, and then we continue the conversation. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, the sun is coming out this morning in Nairobi, 19 degrees. It'll go to highs of 23 today, down to lows of 16. Light rain in Nyeri at 18, highs of 23. 25 will be the high in Nakuru. It's mostly sunny at 19. 18 degrees and mostly sunny in Eldoret, highs of 24. Highs of 27 in Kisumu, where it's mostly sunny at 23. 20 degrees and light smattering of rain here and there in Kakamega, highs of 26. We'll see highs of 28 in Mombasa, where it's raining currently at 28 and raining in Malindi as well, highs of 27 and lows of 25. Heavy thunderstorms this morning in Kampala now. It has graduated to that. At 19 degrees, it'll go to highs of 25. 29 will be the high recorded in Dar es Salaam today, where it continues to rain at 25. It's sunny in Johannesburg at 12. Highs of 19 and lows of 7. Rain showers in Lagos at 27. Highs of 31. Highs of 30 in Kinshasa and partly sunny at 25. Looking out east finally this morning, Beijing going into early afternoon, early evening, 24 and sunny. That'll be the high for today. Sunny conditions in Paris at 4, highs of 17 and lows of 10. It's sunny in London at 7, highs of 12 and lows of 8, and getting much warmer in New York. 16 degrees and clear getting into Monday morning. We'll see highs of 19 and lows of 14.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. SpiceFM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
20 minutes after 9, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. We welcome your participation and contribution to this discussion. 0719-012-600. Hell in Saudi, working like slaves, dying like animals. That's a story that's been highlighted by The Standard this morning, giving the various stories of various people who have left this country and gone to work elsewhere. For example, Blessing Nasimiyu, 23-year-old woman who left Kinwet village some 10 kilometers from the maize-growing town of Moisbridge, Uasin Gishu County, in 2019. According to the parents, Anthony and Gladys Masika, they encouraged their daughter to take what looked like an exciting opportunity in Saudi Arabia so that she could help to support the treatment of her mother who was battling cancer. However, Nasimiyu died in January under mysterious circumstances. Alice Kagea was also in her early 20s. She died in Saudi Arabia in December 2020, according to Bernard Musera Kagea. His younger sister left the country early last year in good health, but barely 3 months later, the family was informed that she was ill and had been admitted to ICU. Later, they were told that she had undergone a surgical operation. They don't know who authorized the medical procedure or the nature of the operation she underwent, but she died. Esther Wanjiru Wakonyo. In February this year, a report of the sudden death of Esther from Nakuru County, who was working in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, emerged. Wakonyo died at the home that she was working after a short illness. The family did not have the finances to transport her body for interment in Kenya, and a fundraiser was conducted a week after the news of her death. A video of Wanjiru's body being moved out of the house to Shemesh Mortuary in Riyadh surfaced, according to a Kenyan woman in Saudi Arabia. Wanjiru, who was born on July 7th, 1993, died on February 10th. Anne Wanjiru. Earlier in March, the remains of Anne Wanjiru, who died in Bahrain on February 20th, arrived in Kajiado County. She died a day after talking to her brother, Geoffrey, who resides in the Kware area of Wangatarongai. He says, my sister told the family that she had been sick for some weeks. She said she had requested her employer to take her to hospital, but the employer had refused. Rebecca Chesang from Kapkenyeloi village in Nandi, who returned to the country in January this year after the Standard highlighted her plight in Saudi Arabia. According to Chesang, who's 30 years old, 4 out of the 20 women she traveled with to the Middle East in February last year died under unclear circumstances. 4 out of 20 women that she traveled with. Winnie Jepkogei. She's also from Nandi, and the family is crying for help. Her mother narrates that Jepkogei told her that her employer was not satisfied with her performance and became very angry with her and chopped off her ears. Halima Kadzo, 35-year-old. She left Kaloleni for employment in Saudi Arabia. In November last year, her legs started swelling but was denied permission by her employer to seek treatment. Went to hospital, was diagnosed with diabetes, was amputated. She says she is now under the care of a compatriot, Lilian Zawadi, in Riyadh. The employer refused to bring her home. This and very many other stories are what is happening to Kenyans who have gone to seek employment in that country.
Right.
Many of them, you can clearly see it's a direct injustice of some one form or the other. You'd expect that then the embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and other embassies in the region would be talking to the headquarters in Nairobi and saying, guys, we have an issue. We have an issue. Let us see how we can help. We have an issue because there are people who are arriving in this country, they go, they seek employment, and they end up on the streets. They end up suffering. They are dying. They have no way of getting back home. Okay? This is not the conversation that we hear. We are not hearing many people saying, okay, when we arrived there, we had to register ourselves with the embassy at Riyadh, and we had to call in every so often. And when I got into problems, I went straight to the embassy, and the embassy was able to put me into nothing.
Nothing like that.
Nothing of the sort. You are handing your travel documents to your employer. Should that be the case? Should there be no way where the government actually is the guarantor and tells your employer, we, the government of the Republic of Kenya, are guaranteeing that this person, whatever you need the documents for, don't take the documents. We are the guarantor. That should be the case. Because the employer here is basically taking that documentation as something, as some guarantee that whatever I have signed a 2-year contract, maybe I've paid the agent for a whole year, you shall work for that year. There should be a way.
I think that absolutely needs to, especially now in light of this. I think that one story like this is too many, but because we've seen for years, I mean, it's been years since you've heard about these injustices, hasn't it? Well, this is easily very, very many years that you've heard about this, some of them even worse. I remember a particular year when we saw horror stories of an Ethiopian national being beaten very badly in the same Saudi Arabia. So then these are cases that we know of, have been reported down to the detail because somebody went out of their way to report this. How about those many, many more that are not reported?
Yeah.
How about those who have more terrible stories to tell about what is going on? So one thing is clear. Let's not get it wrong. That the truth of the matter is that these people are being offered a better salary than what they would be able to earn here. That goes without saying. In the same job, in the same job level, kind, whatever. They're being offered a better salary. However, the conditions under which they have to work are bad. At best, that's the best we can give. Now, yes, there are those who would go and have a good experience, they work, but unfortunately, it only takes one bad apple to spoil the bunch, right?
Yes.
And the bad situation that these many others are going through should not be the case, especially when they go via agents that are known to the government in Kenya.
Are supposed to be known.
If they were going on their own, if they were just going on their own, I'm going to stand up today and I'm going to go to Saudi Arabia, I'm looking for a job. I think that's different. But those who go through these agents, right, there is a government aspect to it. Then there should be regulation. There should be measures. There must be minimum requirements for their safety and protection.
Let's seek experiences from even our audience. 0719-012-600. You know of a case have you gone through? Has a close relative, a close friend gone through something of this sort? Let us hear from you this morning. 0719-012-600. And also, what should the government do? Clifford in Wasingishu. Good morning.
Good morning, Spice Radio.
Good morning, Clifford.
Fine, thank you. So, on this matter,
yes,
I think the government should be a little bit more clear. The government should come out and have a kind of a memorandum of understanding with the Saudi Arabia officials that this is what we expect, the bare minimums for us to send our people there. Because the government has been saying for a long time they'll be generating jobs, they'll be generating income, and it has not been able to be achieved. So if somebody can be able to get the same thing outside, then I believe the government should be able to give somebody just that they are a kind of like they should put them at ease that will go there and work under good conditions, because people always go to Canada, people go to US and their working conditions are so nice, and they come back and their living standards are good and they are okay.
Yes.
What's the difference between going here in Saudi Arabia?
That's
so
true.
I think that the government should really work on a framework that enables our people, when they go there, they are treated as human beings. And I would like to add on a topic we had in the morning between the 7 to 8 period on
the
media freedom.
Okay, on the media freedom.
No,
Yes.
but the media. I don't know if this really is a media freedom whereby media people take people's personal lives and put them in the open. And at times these are very sensitive issues, and I think some things really need to be restrained in the terms of the media, because this results into almost a defamation of somebody's public image, and
Do you have an example of something that you'd like to raise on that?
Okay, I'd just like to use maybe these tablets that we have right now, the likes of Edgar Barry, when they take people's personal, private issues and they try to use this information, and they put them in the public eye. So I think the government should also come in and regulate these people known as these tabloid influencers who actually come out and they spoil the good image that the media has created.
Thank you, Clifford. I think it also falls into what Mr. David Omoy was referring to as the media ethics and the journalism code of conduct. It all falls into that. There are people who have been trained about it. There are those who haven't. And then he says there are some things that if you have grown up in a society, you know what to say, when to say.
Yeah.
I think it's a big conversation, but thank you very much for raising it.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day in Wasingishu.
You too.
0719-012-600, talking about hell in Saudi Arabia. You know, there's in May 2017, there was an agreement that was signed by the Minister of Labour and Social Development, Dr. Ali bin Nasser Al-Ghafis, and on the labour recruitment with the Republic of Kenya's Minister for East African Community and Social Protection, Phyllis Kandia, in Jeddah. The ministry said the signing agreement is in a bid to increase the labor exporting countries and open new avenues for recruiting well-trained and skilled domestic workers in order to appease the growing demands of them in Saudi Arabia. If offering a legal framework that enhances cooperation among the labor parties, protecting the rights of employers and domestic workers, as well as governing the contractual relationships between them. The agreement was facilitating cooperation between the two parties, including the employment of Kenyan domestic workers, the rights of the employees and the workers, in addition to controlling recruitment expenses in both countries. Both parties agreed recruiting Kenyan workers should be done through offices, companies, manpower agencies, or job placement centers that operate under valid licenses, as well as having unified work contracts among the stakeholders. The Kenyan government must take necessary measures before sending Kenyan workers who must be qualified and medically fit to Saudi Arabia. The candidates must not have any criminal record, and they receive training at household institutes. Moreover, the domestic workers should observe Saudi regulations and traditions. Also, they should sign work contracts before leaving Kenya, as the recruitment agencies must ensure that their workers complete work duration. This was signed between the ministers of Kenya and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 2017. Framework in place, cooperation agreement, what should happen, who should come, how the Kenyan workers should come, recognizing that there is great demand for workers in the domestic space in Saudi Arabia, recognizing that Kenyan workers are valuable, but we're still seeing what we're seeing.
So it's not the framework, I guess, again, the framework was put in place, but the implementation of such, because this is what we're talking about now, then that the visits, making sure that these measures are in place, those things actually don't happen. Because if they did, the regulations then are not enforced.
But it's tricky. Think about it. Among the freedoms that Kenyans are supposed to enjoy is precisely that. You are supposed to be able to seek the betterment of your life in the way that you see fit.
Yep.
You don't break any laws. Look at people who go to study abroad. It's the same reason. Whichever country they go to, think of any country that many of our students go, whether it is India, the US, the UK. The government makes it possible for that to happen because they don't prevent you from actually going. All right?
Yeah.
Now, when people also seek employment elsewhere, meaning you have gone beyond your education, you now have a job, again, the government does not interfere because these people who work abroad form part of a very great portion of the money that we get in the country that we refer to as remittances.
Yes.
Okay? Now, what makes this particular cadre of people unique is that they are young. They are very young. Many of them do not have any qualification beyond having gone to school, probably up to Form 4. Okay? And maybe that training that you're referring to, some may have, but the vast majority haven't. And part of the reason is because if you simply have gone up to standard 8, or you finish your Form 4 in this country, the jobs that you're going for in Saudi Arabia are probably the jobs you've been doing in our country anyway. And part of the reason is because you look at what you're being paid. We have people who pay some really hideous amounts to the house help. Okay, in this country. So, such an individual, it is clear that this would look like an opportunity.
24,000 shillings a month.
I mean,
it's a lot of money.
From earning 4,000 shillings here?
And you can do the maths.
And you see, 2-year contract guaranteed.
This is what I'll do, and I'll have changed this at home.
Yes.
But more significantly, there are people who've actually gone abroad and they've done this very same thing we're talking about. They have seen it done. Usually what is most attractive is not just the going, but the stories and the examples of people who've actually gone and there's evidence that their lives have actually changed.
Yeah.
But what I also suspect is that those who manage these affairs usually choose people who at best would be referred to as vulnerable. Your education is limited. Of necessity, your knowledge will be limited.
Sure.
Your age. Okay? Somebody who hasn't matured enough to probably understand many things and who will be easily excitable by other things. Now, in my mind, that is the more reason that the government should be involved, because these are people represent some of the most vulnerable people in our communities. Yes.
Actually, if you look at it, just the examples that have been published in the Standard today. Halima is 35, Winnie is 28, Rebecca is in her late 20s. Anwa Wanjiro is 35. They're all above 23 and above.
Yes.
You see? And then they end up facing this kind of exploitation. Let's take a break. When we come back, I still want to hear. You started by saying, it's tricky.
It is tricky.
And I want to understand what it's tricky. Where is the trick? It's tricky for whom? The employee, the employer, the Saudi government, the agency here, the Kenyan government. What? 24 minutes to 10 o'clock, and we still want to hear from you. 0719-012-600. Let's see how the roads look like, and then we pick your calls. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Have you seen them? Am I lying?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone in Wasingishu was asking me, what channel is SpiceFM?
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you.
What a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you. And it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
It's moving slowly along Thika Road this morning, trying to get into the CBD. It's not crazy. It's just moving slowly. So if it's moving, it's good, because then you get into the city without too much of a drama. Huge accident on the Naivasha-Nakuru highway this morning. Kimende Magina, due to an accident that has happened this morning. So if you're headed in that direction, take it easy, because that is yet to be cleared out of the way. And so now what we're dealing with is the traffic then going in that direction. So you're going to be there for a while. If you're headed out there, just know it's because of an accident that has taken place this morning. Okay, coming off of Mombasa Road, the usual with the construction, looks like until December from what we are told. So this one, we just have to get used to it every morning. Let's see what it looks like through the rest of the morning. Talk to us on SpiceFM on Twitter, so we can see if there are any situations that are getting out of control, and we can offer a solution in terms of a better route. Okay?
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Okay.
94.4 Spice FM.
We want to hear from you. 0719-012-600 or SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Wanjeri Ndero says, look, many of the women that you describe who went to work in Saudi Arabia and other countries are trafficked by some well-connected individuals. One known trafficker is a brother to a current CS. Their passports are withheld by the traffickers. This is what activist Wanjeri Ndero is saying. What I read earlier was a report that is published on the Ministry of Labor of Saudi Arabia about this deal that was signed by the Ministry of Labor in Saudi Arabia and the Ministry of Social Protection in Kenya, where they agreed on how this whole process shall be governed for the betterment of the employee and the employer. We are still seeing, and this was because there had been a lot of hue and cry on not many people going through proper channels, being exploited. The government of Saudi Arabia being asked, and they're saying, but we actually have no record that this person was in this country and that they were working as a domestic worker. The embassy, Kenya's embassy in Saudi Arabia, saying we did not know that this person was here. And so this was to try and smoothen this whole process. You shall have only registered agents here. These agents, this is how they shall operate. You shall take the workers there. You shall sign a contract before you leave the country. don't come looking for work once you've arrived in Riyadh. Sign a contract before you leave Kenya. Land in Riyadh. Work, go back home. Clear. We are still seeing contracts are being signed in Kenya, yes. But the conditions in Saudi Arabia have not improved. So it is tricky. Why, CT?
It's tricky on very many fronts. Even if you have that framework that you so very eloquently read, there is now what you call the business ethics of people who actually conduct this sort of business. Now, these people aren't attracted because they don't have knowledge. It's because what is told to them, what is presented to them is attractive. And everything that you read earlier on with regards to how you are recruited, the process you go through before you get there, clearly everything is fine. Everything is planned for. Everything is arranged for.
And very smooth.
Yes.
It's within days, within a week.
Yes.
You have been trained, your travel documents have been processed, and
Yes.
you have boarded a flight, and you are not paying a
Shilling. And they pay for all these things.
Imagine, they pay for everything.
You
And
even
you
have
understand.
a passport and you're going abroad. Goodness gracious me.
Smooth.
No, it's something that is very attractive. Tricky in the sense that how do you then cope with a population of people who need employment, and you, as the government, despite your best efforts, are seeing an ever-increasing population of young people who can't get jobs. Okay? So to make it easy, you are not restrictive when it comes to them seeking employment elsewhere.
By not being restrictive, what do you mean? You sort of, look the other way.
It actually goes beyond not looking the other way. What it means is you do what Kenyans are good at doing. You have it on paper, processes and ways in which these things can be done, but the follow-through, the implementation, the follow-through that should accompany it never happens.
So you say, here is a framework.
Yes.
But, boss,
Yes.
if you find yourself there, go.
Yes.
Okay.
So you go there. Now, where the lack of framework, we actually have an ambassador in Riyadh.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yes. And these are people who, they are our servants. They are supposed to actually look after the interests of the country, and the country is no country without people. So these people who are in Saudi, should it not be also among the things that you land in Saudi, please go to the embassy and register so people know who you are and where you are. Because just the knowledge that your embassy knows who you are and where you are, that would make the would-be employer a little hesitant because there'll be a follow-up.
But it's a requirement.
Actually,
It's
that's
actually
already
a
done.
requirement. When you go to another country
think
as a
about
citizen, the first thing you're supposed to do actually is register with your high commission or embassy that you have arrived in said country. That's actually what you're supposed
Is
to
it done?
do. But exactly, is it actually done? And is there anybody who's doing any kind of follow-up? Because
To make sure that this is done.
To
But
make
look
sure
at
that
it
this
this
is
way,
done.
okay? This agent who is here and is licensed has taken your documents, has signed a contract with an employer and given you a contract here. Before you leave, you have signed a contract, which means that there's an agent who has information that they can just supply to the embassy straight.
This person is
This
coming.
flight has arrived. These are the people. This is the employment contract. This is their residence. This is where they can be found. All the details. In fact, you land in Saudi Arabia, you're already finding the employer waiting for you. You go. Start working. There's somebody else who's sorting out all these things that should be happening.
Eric, again, why I mentioned it's tricky is this. You would assume, I refer to this group of people as being vulnerable. And that is why that much attention needs to be paid to them. Many of them have never even traveled outside the towns in which they live in.
Yes.
And then now you're getting them to travel outside the country.
Yeah, they came to Nairobi essentially to leave the country.
You've
the
come
first time
from
they've come to
Kenyeloi village in
Yes.
Nandi.
They may have been to Eldoret. All I'm saying is, look, these aren't people who are overly exposed and who've been traveling the world and then have now decided to go and work in Saudi Arabia. That isn't the case. Now, the example...
So what makes it tricky then for the government?
It makes it tricky for the individuals who want these jobs because the lack of experience, exposure, and knowledge is actually being exploited here.
Okay.
And the dire situation that they find themselves in.
Okay.
It's tricky because the government ought to protect its citizens, whether they are within Kenya or outside, but it is tricky because the government needs to ensure that people can actually, should we say, look for livelihoods elsewhere.
Yeah.
So they say, look, we've opened this thing up. But the thing that is required with this particular group to ensure that actually their circumstances are protected isn't happening. Remember, it's the same thinking that allowed the government to open up a portal where young people can go on the internet, look for jobs, and you know how that one turned out. We were doing a Kenyan thing and writing all sorts of documentation and providing all sorts of assistance, which we seem to be very good at. And there's a bit of a complaint about that, was there not? Okay, just a bit of a complaint. Yes. So in terms of what the government is doing, it's tricky because how do you criticize them for enabling the citizens to actually go and find employment elsewhere?
I'm criticizing them for not doing what even they have a state department that's supposed to do that. State Department for Social Protection.
What they have said they
There's
will
a
do.
protection side
What
that
they
is
have
a
been
role that can
instituted to
only
do.
be played by government.
Yeah.
And the government is not playing a very good role in this. Let's hear from Dr. Mahajan in Mombasa. Good morning, Dr.
Good morning. Thank you.
Karibu sana to the Situation Room.
Yes, thank you. What I would wish to say is our embassy in some of those countries, they don't provide good consular service for the citizens. You will notice that even in Saudi Arabia, smaller countries like Benin, which send about 200, 500 people during their pilgrimage, their embassies make sure that the pilgrims have good consular services, whereby Kenyans who are going for pilgrimage will be about 2,000 to even 4,000, receive almost basically nil consular services. I mean, these are not people who are going to work. But you have said that these things is very complicated. Complicated in the sense that most of these people are naive. They have never traveled before. So they are mesmerized by the good stories that people say. They are mesmerized by the airports that they and they cannot even know the directions. And when they come there, the first thing that will happen, possibly an agent or the employee will say, look, just like here when tourists come, there's somebody with a banner that says, we are looking for Eric. We are looking for Eric. So there's this person say, who is Chepkoech? Who is Chepkoech? Then say, here I am. And then you are taken now to the house, and then your passport is kind of confiscated and kept under lock and key. What the government has got to do, it is most of the time these workers don't go in one and twos. Sometimes they go 20 or 50.
They go in groups.
They go in big groups. At the airport, the embassy should have their people there, registering
as they disembark a flight,
as they come, and then kind of debrief them and so on. Because once they land into the hands of the employee, then those people do not have access. But on the other hand, I will say, most of the time, when these workers they manage to go to the police, because I've had experiences. The police normally treat them very well, and actually the police stations, just like here, they have hotels giving them 3 meals in a day and and then because the police will follow the rules and call the workers. It is only in the unfortunate events that these people are now go and land in the immigration centers where there's crowded and where sometimes there's sickness, and then they don't offer any consular services. I would say the government has got to up its game. Perhaps, like all Kenyan things, what is there, these agents get away with it because some of them possibly they have got very, 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 very high connections. And you could find possibly they are government people who own some of these agencies. Therefore, they do what is there on paper and looking at the agreements and everything that is there, but then they are not called to be responsible and to be accountable while the people are there, because these agents are difficult to catch.
They just want the money, right?
Because there are people who have got connections within the government. That is the thing.
Bottom line, just human trafficking. Dr. Mahajan, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Asante for your contribution. 0719-012-600. Some comments on social media as well.
Yeah, quite some. I mean, just before we get to that, so it just from what folks are saying, I mean, and it's not the first one that we've seen, is that essentially it would be difficult to regulate yourself. It would be difficult for you to ask that measures be put in place if you're involved in the process. Because it's the second time we're hearing now, at least this morning, that there would be those in government who are involved in this racket.
Some good connections.
Yeah, some good connections. So it'll be difficult, right? Okay.
Before you look at those, let's hear from Lydia. Lydia, good morning.
Good morning, SpiceFM. Thank you for your program. I wanted to say that the biggest crooks are the travel agents. They are very desperate to make a trip for you. They should also give you the list of where they went. The parents also should give a list of which travel agent they traveled, etc. Because the travel agents are very desperate to get people to travel.
Are you talking about travel agents or the recruitment agencies?
Travel agents.
Okay.
Sometimes they even got a big list of false things, but they only want your trip. That's what they care about.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Lydia. 0719-012-600.
Vincent said it's sad to hear about the humiliation that domestic workers face in the Middle Eastern countries. I have a close relative who was once there, and since she came back, she's a bit psychologically disturbed. Well, Laban Kiprotich says, agents recruiting these workers have the responsibility to assist if the visas are withheld in conjunction with our embassy there. It's really saddening. Listening from Lamu this morning. So, I mean, that's the thing. The agents should have more of a role in all of this than just recruiting these individuals and then handing them over to where they're going to do the work. Government should be more involved in knowing where citizens are going and making sure that they're actually taken care of and working under certain conditions. Other than that, then I think that, look, because we hear people go to other countries to work, but because we have heard that this is such a terrible situation that Kenyans are facing in these countries, then something needs to be done in terms of regulation in these countries. We're not saying the whole world have your regulation in place.
This
particular market, because we have seen that things have gone wrong.
It's actually just enforcement. And that whole issue of, so who are these agents? They're agents that have been registered. Who is involved in this business of recruiting Kenyans and finding them employment opportunities in the Gulf states and the Middle East? Who are they? Because if you look at then who they are, then you'll be able to see why is it that the government is unable to be tough on this particular agency.
Yeah.
It sounds so straightforward. There's an agency here. It's clear. It's well documented. It's labeled. It's known by the government. It picks people. It takes them to Saudi Arabia. They get employment. Then this agency, does their role end there? Does their role end at the end of the 2-year contract that they helped you secure?
Exactly. It would seem for a lot of these fellas that their role ends when they board the plane. I'm telling you, this fellow that I looked at, he just wanted to make sure that these women got in the door. Once the last girl had gotten in the door, he was gone. He didn't even look back once.
That was the end of it.
That was it.
Dorothy in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Yes. So I wanted to contribute to this debate.
Go ahead.
So I've had an experience with these people. Last year, not actually that last year, this year, there's a sister-in-law of mine who traveled to the Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, her mother died the day she arrived at the employer's place.
Okay.
We had hell trying to get her back, so at least she could attend her mother's funeral, but that actually never happened.
Right.
Wow.
After struggling back and forth, she only came back a week after the burial.
Wow.
Now, with my experience, I've realized the agents are under NEA, National Employment Authority.
Yep.
But our interactions with the National Employment Authority, we actually realized that they actually can't help much because I didn't understand their role, and it sounded as if they're part of the agents. My understanding was that they're supposed to regulate, but they didn't help us much. So probably maybe what needs to happen is to just enhance their role to ensure that the the employees are actually protected because they have all the documentations, the contracts that the employees sign here before they go reside with them. But they could not help us in that situation because they say they can only deal with the Kenyan agent. They're not able to deal with the agent in Saudi Arabia.
Aye. Let me ask you.
Yeah. Yes.
So just take us through the entire process of your relative getting a job. How did they come to know about these agency? How did they get in touch with the agency? How did they end up in Saudi Arabia?
Now, unfortunately, she actually did this secretly because, we were against the entire thing. So, it was pretty much as per our discussion with the agents, it was pretty much the same thing that you actually said. They met through some lady in Mombasa who actually connected them to some agent here in Nairobi. They went for training, just as you had mentioned, and everything was taken care of. Now, the quagmire is that these people are actually telling us if we want her to come back, we must pay them 250,000 for her to come back.
Pay the agent?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
money that
compensation for all this.
Wow. Yes, we didn't have the money at the time because we were busy arranging for the funeral. And they insisted. So it was a lot of back and forth between the local agent and the other agent. And we ended up with time like that, so she didn't come. But eventually she came because one thing I also realized from the experience is that the police in Saudi Arabia, I think, are efficient.
Okay.
Because she had a bit of... She actually went to the police to report this.
Okay.
Because now she started having issues with her employer now, because now she was, of course, distraught. She just lost the mother. She's not working. Obviously, she's not performing optimally.
Yeah.
So according to her, the employer started harassing her and stuff. So she ended up to the police. And the police actually helped her to go back to the agent, took her to the local, to the Saudi Arabian agent, and that's where she was. But while she was there, they kept insisting that she should just continue working. Your mother has gone. You going back there.
You're alive. Oh my goodness.
Actually, they do not have value for when someone has gone. They don't have that sympathy of.
They move on.
Actually, it's different because remember, Dorothy, that's an Islamic country. You are buried within that one day.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. So
that story of saying I'm going for my mother's funeral.
This is a funeral. I mean, you die, you're buried. That story has ended, and you can then carry on with your money and other things. So it isn't that they don't lack empathy. It's just a complete cultural difference here.
Dorothy, thank you very much for your contribution, and thank you for calling in today.
You.
This is a big conversation. So remember, tune in to KTN News tonight at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. And also the Standard tomorrow will continue with the serialization of this story. Hell in Saudi. CT, as we say goodbye for today's proverb.
Happiness is not perfected until it is shared. I would argue neither is misery.
Even misery, it's not perfected until it's shared.
Yes.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Thank you very much for